Right, exactly. Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the March 14th, 2017 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege and honor to call tonight's meeting to order. If you haven't already done so, copies of our agenda are on either side of the room on the little shelves. Please feel free to pick up a copy and you can follow along with tonight's proceedings. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment under Section 5, which is designated for public comments of a general nature. These are items or questions or comments that members of the audience have with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda. And when we get to that point in the evening, protocols, please come down to the podium, tell us who you are, and we'll welcome hearing from you. But first, it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So I ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And now I would like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here, thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. And we have 2 sets of minutes to review and approve tonight. Our minutes from our regular council meeting on March 7th, 2017, and executive session minutes for approval only from February 28th, 2017. If there are no changes, questions, comments, or corrections to either set of minutes, I will ask for a motion to approve, please.
Mayor Tully, I move that this council approve the council minutes from March 7th, 2017, and the executive session minutes for approval only from February of 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. And that then brings us to item 4 on tonight's agenda. This is a presentation that we have quarterly at our village council meetings, a presentation from the head of our Economic Development Corporation, Michael Casa, who is here tonight, and putting his notes on the podium, and I will talk a little bit longer to give him an opportunity to get that set up. Our Economic Development Corporation is an independent entity here in town that, as the name implies, facilitates the attraction and retention of quality businesses and other economic activities within our community to help us maintain our economic vitality and vibrancy. So with that, good evening, Mr. Casa. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I was going to say happy January because it feels like that outside, but it's not. It's March 14th. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Tully and village commissioners. I'm Michael Casa, President and CEO of the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, and I'm pleased to present the EDC's quarterly report. Let me start off just by mentioning some projects of importance. Three Corners Grill is the new restaurant that will be locating in the former Fuddruckers site in front of Shop and Save at Downers Park Plaza. They're in for permit, and I have been to their other location in LaGrange, and this will be a great addition to that center. Burlington Coat Factory will be opening a 43,000 square foot new store at the Grove Shopping Center. Will be located next to Marshall's. It is one of the largest new tenants to come into that center in several years. Chipotle, in the last quarter, opened their new location at the corner of Saratoga and Ogden in Downers Grove. Flavor Chem. I've been working with Flavor Chem, as is the village staff, on opportunities for them to expand and enhance their 8 buildings in Oak Grove Commons to create a campus environment. One of our largest employers and one of our more significant businesses. Kirkland's, one of the nation's largest home furnishing stores, is opening a new store at Finley Square on Butterfield Road. Lincoln, a project that has taken a lot of time to bring it to fruition, but Lincoln has submitted plans and has been before the Plan Commission to open a new certified pre-owned dealership at 216 Ogden. It's the former motorcycle business on Ogden Avenue. The building now is in disrepair, and I'm being kind. It's going to involve a multi-million-dollar renovation, and they are moving that portion of the Lincoln business to Downers Grove. Nasa Brazilian Grill will be opening a new restaurant in the Butterfield Plaza on Butterfield Road. PLZ Aeroscience in the last quarter moved their corporate headquarters to the Corridors Office Park in Downers Grove. They are the largest company in their field in the world. Packey Webb Ford, it continues to make good progress on their new dealership project at Ogden and Lacey. And Skechers opened a new store in Butterfield Plaza on Butterfield Road a few months ago. And finally, Trio Restaurant. There was a restaurant vacancy on 75th Street, the former Bohemian Garden, which closed, and that is the new tenant that has moved in to fill that space. That, again, was fairly recent. I'm going to touch briefly on some retail projects, retail centers. 640 Ogden Avenue, more commonly known as the former Duhlman's Motel site, was demolished, and redevelopment on that small retail center is proceeding. Butterfield Plaza, which is owned by a company called Viking Partners out of Cincinnati, has been engaged in upgrading their tenant base. They have had some tenants whose leases came due that they allowed those leases to lapse, or indicated that those tenants could move on, and they've replaced them with better tenants that will generate more sales, companies like Tuesday Morning. The same thing is happening next door at Finley Square, which is owned by Federal Realty, another national developer, and they have also brought in new tenants into that center, and again allowed other tenants that weren't performing as well to have allow their leases to lapse or just to let them leave. Grove Shopping Center. We are making the opportunity, which exists with the unfortunate closure of Ultra and Michael's moving their store to Bolingbrook. It now presents us with an opportunity. There's 110,000 square foot space that's now available if those two units can be combined. There are tenants that are interested in the Michael's site because their broker has been working on it for a while. So today I met with representatives of both ownership groups, and we are going to present them with opportunities to work together and attempt to land a much larger anchor for that center that would then be located next to next to Marshall's and Burlington Coat Factory. So I'll provide you with updates when those become available. And last is a project that's been going on for some time now, which hopefully will be coming to a very positive conclusion, and that's the Vequity Real Estate redevelopment on the northwest corner of Ogden and Main. They will be, I believe, before the council on the 21st of March. They were before the Plan Commission recently, where they received a unanimous approval. This has been a very, very difficult project for many reasons, but I think it's going to provide a tremendous uplift, not just for that corner, but also for the corridor itself. Let me talk about sales tax revenue. Start with, and these will be year over year, since we now have the 2016 final numbers. So for the home rule sales tax, it was a 2.66% increase from 2016 over 2015. On the municipal tax, the news is not as good. The 2016 numbers came in at 1.89% drop. However, when two state of Illinois adjustments were added, which I think accounts for about $316,000, and they were spread out over the course of 5 different months, that reduced the sales tax revenue for the village for 2016, which resulted in a revenue drop of 3.7 versus 2015. When we present at the next quarterly meeting the fourth quarter and final end of the year segments in terms of all the different retail segments, not sure how that part will be handled, because I'm not really sure where to place them. Not even sure, frankly, if those numbers are from 2016. but the village is taking a $316,000 adjustment, which they've already done, and that does reduce the amount of sales tax revenue for the year. By the way, I wanted to thank the village's excellent finance department for explaining that to me. It was somewhat complicated. Let me talk about municipal sales tax comparisons for communities in our trade area. A year and a half ago, AECOM, a worldwide consulting firm, developed a report for us on the Downers Grove and in the trade area that we're in, and they identified these municipalities as being in our trade area, meaning these are the ones we compete with the most for projects. And as you can see, several of them have had increases in 2016 over 2015. Bolingbrook was up about 2.5%. Darien slightly under. They were down just a slight bit. Lisle saw an increase of 8%. Lombard about 1.5. Oakbrook almost 6. Oakbrook Terrace was down about 1.5. Westmont was up 2.48, and Woodridge was down 1.27. This is on the municipal sales tax, not the home rule. And later in the report, I'm going to talk about the work AECOM is doing for us that will help us analyze how these municipalities are doing within each segment, which should give us a better understanding of where they're doing well, why they're doing well, maybe why they're not doing well in certain segments. So, the state of Illinois has released the quarterly reports on each retail segment. We don't have the fourth quarter reports in yet. I think it'll be coming fairly soon. But I wanted to share with you the third quarter results, because the last report we gave, we only had the second quarter. So you have a hard copy in front of you, because obviously you cannot read that on the screen. So let me go to the totals for the end of the third quarter, based on the numbers that were reported by the state. It was basically close to break even for Downers Grove. And in the segments, general merchandise is the first one. We had a 1.19% increase. We don't have a large general merchandise store, but there are businesses in Downers Grove the state does classify as general merchandise. Kohl's would be one of them. Food, which is grocery. This is where we saw our biggest drop of almost 13.5% over 2015. And there are several reasons for it. I think the principal one is that the stores in our Ogden corridor, especially east of Maine, have been hurt by the opening of Mariano's, which opened in Westmont in February of 2016. This is basically restaurants. There was an increase of 4% in 2016 over 2015. Apparel saw an increase of 7.76%. This is primarily due to the fact that there have been some apparel stores that have opened both on 75th Street and on Butterfield. Furniture and appliance saw an increase of 21.64%. This is primarily due to Art Van, but also Grand Appliance did open a new appliance store on Butterfield Road. This is a number that is going to bear watching, though, because in 2015, Art Van broke store records, and it may be difficult to continue, in order to turn that into a positive number, to continue to break records. But as of the third quarter, there was a sharp increase. Lumber, building, and hardware, home improvement, hardware type stores had an increase in 2016 of 4.41% over 2015. Automotive and gas stations saw a drop of 6.34%. Dave and I have spent a lot of time trying to determine the cause for this. So I went and spoke to a couple of auto dealers in Downers Grove, and one of the comments, the takeaways that I received was that most of our dealerships are ones where they're dealers where families go to buy cars. In 2015, which was the high watermark for the national automotive industry in terms of sales, typically people will wait 3-4 years to buy another car. They've got financed it over 3 or 4 years, or they have a lease of 3 to 4 years. So they're not buying a new car the next year. And that probably applies to us maybe more than a community that has a lot more upscale dealers where people are buying cars in shorter time periods. But I wanted to show you, the EDC obviously doesn't have access to individual dealership sales totals. So I took the dealers that were represented in Downers Grove and found out and went to look how did those car companies do in 2016 in the United States. And so let me tell you what those are. We have a Buick dealership in Downers Grove. Buick was up 3% nationally in 2016 over 2015. Chrysler was down 27% nationally over 2015, which is quite a number. Dodge was down almost 4% nationally. Ford was down just under 1% or just over 0.5%. Hyundai was up just almost 1%. Jeep was up 6.1%. Mazda was down 6.7%. Mitsubishi was up 1 point. Nissan was up 5.5%. And Volkswagen was down 7.6%. These are the dealers that are represented. Now, what's not included in here are Bentley and Lamborghini and Aston Martin, because they actually report their sales as part of an automotive group. So, for example, Bentley sales are lumped in with Audi, and I was not able to have those broken down. But I think this will show you, for the dealers that we have in Downers, how those car companies did in 2016 nationally. And just a note, the National Automotive Dealers Association is projecting sales of 17.1 million new cars and light trucks in the United States in 2017. That is a slight decrease from 15 and 16 levels, and it'd be equivalent of what cars were sold in the United States in 2014. Fairly stable, but slightly down. Returning to our list, drugs and miscellaneous retail was up in Downers Grove 14% in 2016. And manufacturers, those are companies who are located in Downers Grove who are able to charge sales tax because of either a point of sale that they have at their facility, or the product itself is subject to sales tax. And perhaps at the next quarterly meeting, I'm going to talk about how we are going to look at trying to attract more manufacturing and industrial firms that actually generate sales tax. Let me talk about the EDC priorities, especially as it relates to commercial development, retail development. We asked AECOM to update the data that they provided in their report to include all of 2016. So in November of 2015, AECOM generated all of their data, provided us with all the data, and then in January of 16, they produced their final report. The data is like this thick in terms of their data sheets, and the report's more, probably about 20, 25 pages. So I asked Chris Brewer, who was the project manager, if they would take all that data and they would go and they would update it for 2016, and what would that cost, and they've agreed to do it free. So the only thing they're missing, they have all the data they need except for one thing. They don't have the fourth quarter retail numbers by segment, which is what we just showed you for the third quarter. Because that will not only give a much more accurate a picture, but also it'll give us an idea how other towns are doing and where they're doing well, where they're not doing well. So as soon as the fourth quarter segment numbers are in, AECOM will be able to plug those in, and we will have a full 2016 report, which of course we'll provide to the village staff and the village council. Number 2, developing strategy for future redevelopment sites. We are currently working on our leading redevelopment site on the Butterfield corridor, and putting a strategy together on how that redevelopment site can become a reality in terms of retail redevelopment in the future. That's an important component of our strategic plan. The second one we will focus on is the Grove Shopping Center, which also is an important component of that plan. A lot of the information that will be provided will be financial, what the costs will be for a total redevelopment, and what tools will need to be used, made available to help encourage redevelopment on that particular site. Third, track tenant inventory and leases through CoStar. We subscribe to a service called CoStar. It is the nation's largest database of available sites. We use it every day of the week. But it also provides information about every commercial, industrial, office property in the United States, as well as a complete information about their tenants. In many cases, there's lease information on there, when leases are due, what they're even paying for rent, what it costs them to buy the property. It's tremendous information. We are going to start enhancing the amount of tracking that we do, and then Millie in our office is going to produce a complete inventory of all of our shopping centers in terms of who the tenants are and how far the leases run. This will help us not only to get a better idea of what's coming available in terms of leases expiring, but also allows us to protect ourselves against other communities that may want to come in and have that retailer move to their town. Continue to monitor retail and auto dealer trends. Today I attended the International Council of Shopping Centers Conference in Chicago, and on February 28th I attended the 7th Annual Chicago Retail Conference, and I want to talk about some of the takeaways, because in both cases, these conferences are run by the shopping center industry, so they're obviously bullish on their industry. The overall message was there are still deals out there to be had. There are tenants to be attracted, but there are some significant challenges. So here are just some of the takeaways that I received from that conference on the 28th. Online sales will continue to grow as a percentage of overall sales. Apparel and general merchandise and soft goods are the hardest hit and will continue to be the hardest hit. Most of the major store closings in the United States now are apparel. And in the next few years, we'll see an increase in online activity for both groceries and cars. Free delivery is becoming imperative for many retailers who want to compete with Amazon. The CEO of Target just announced they're going to match Walmart and Amazon by having free 2-day shipping. He says if we don't do it, they'll be out of business. Next, national retailers will continue to close stores or go out of business. There almost is not a day that goes by that a major announcement isn't made. It'll become even more difficult to finance large commercial projects. It all comes down to your tenant mix. Have you attracted? Are you redeveloping that center? Are you building a center? And do you have the credit-worthy tenants that will make it attractive to a lender? The U.S., this is probably the number one takeaway, the U.S. has an oversupply of retail real estate, given the closing of stores and the reduction of square footage of other stores. But here's the good news. There are still many, many opportunities for commercial redevelopment and to attract tenants. Most people still buy their goods and services in person. Shopping center owners, this was probably the biggest piece of advice that I heard. Shopping center owners and communities have to work together to meet the needs of the retail tenant. Are you meeting the needs of that tenant? Because that tenant has so many options. If you're a good tenant that's growing and producing sales and therefore sales tax, there's a lot of other shopping center owners and communities that would like to have you in their town. That is something I think you're going to see at least the EDC and I'm sure the village focus on as time goes on. Before I open it up for questions, I wanted to introduce, I wrote these nice things out about him, I hope I can find it. John Luca. John is the chairman of the board of the EDC. He is, John, where are you? Right here. He is managing director of Cantor Fitzgerald Real Estate in Chicago. He is, and his expertise in both commercial development as well as real estate financing has been a tremendous resource both to the organization and to me personally. I could pick up the phone and call him any day of the week and say, John, what do you know about this? What do you think of that? And his expertise and his leadership is very much appreciated. So thank you for being here, John. I will stop there and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Casa. I appreciate the report, which we ask you to give us on a quarterly basis, and appreciate the comprehensiveness and the details that go into it. A few questions and some observations. First question is with respect to the municipal sales tax trade area comparisons, and this is basically the sales tax that the state collects, and we get a share of it if we're lucky, as opposed to the home rule sales tax, which is our local sales tax. So the municipal sales tax trade area comparison slide that you had up there, there's some things that I think leap off the page. Bolingbrook was up, Lombard was up, Oak Brook is up. What do those three communities have in common? They have large malls that are somewhat very different than what we have here. Westmont, as you mentioned, had that Mariano's open up. Question I have, though, is, and then the communities that don't have that, you're seeing either flat or reduction. The question I have, though, is the number for Lyle is $273,000, and that's an 8% increase. So it was only $250,000 beforehand? That's their annual, or 3/4 of sales tax?
There's almost, I mean, I don't want to be critical of our neighbor, but there's almost no retail in Lyle.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was right. That
It is right.
It's different by an order of magnitude than
They
anybody else.
lost numerous car dealers about 5-10 years ago.
Right, which
I mean, they
shows what
rely,
happens when that happens.
that Honda dealership is everything to them.
No, and I can see why they were pushing to eliminate the distinction between home rule and non-home rule.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A few of the things that leap off this page is that we've been talking about this for weeks already. We talked about it as part of the long-range plan, and we've been talking about it for some time now, is that we need to start looking beyond the traditional revenue streams that municipalities have for a long time relied upon, because the world is changing. It's already starting to change. This is the sales tax challenge. Yes, you want to keep working very hard. I know our staff is, you and your board are working on attracting sales tax generating businesses to town, and that's not anything we're going to stop doing. In fact, we're probably going to continue to emphasize the importance of that. But I think it just highlights that for all the reasons you mentioned, online sales, changing patterns in how people purchase cars, the entrance of self-driving cars and driving car services. There are all sorts of macro changes that are taking place, I think, are to force all forward-thinking municipalities to start focusing on the world is changing. Do we either sit around and wait for it to run us over, or do we try to anticipate it and stay ahead of the curve? So this is a conversation that council's already started having, and obviously we'll want to continue to do that in conjunction with the community and the EDC as we look at down the road. People are still going to have cars, but it's, as you point out, going to be different. It's not going to be the same as in the past, and people are still going to buy clothes and groceries, but how and where and where those dollars go are going to be very different. We're already seeing that happen. To me, this underscores the importance of this terrific partnership that's been in place now for over a decade with the Economic Development Corporation. And you point out, Mr. Luca, we're actually very lucky to have a number of people who are on the board who have tremendous industry experience and live and breathe this stuff every day. And they're serving as volunteers on that board, and we get the benefit of their brain power. That's tremendously important. I think this is going to continue to be important as we try to meet this challenge, understanding that there's, in DuPage County alone, 34, 35 other communities are all trying to solve the same puzzle. And then once you expand it out to the state and beyond, we're in competition with a lot of different entities. This is an undertaking that's more important than ever. I think it also underscores the importance of focusing on other revenue streams and other opportunities we may have to generate funds for our general fund, because some of these things in the future, as hard as we and others might work on them, they're going to be different than what they were historically. And then I would be remiss if I didn't pick up on something that Commissioner White said a few weeks ago, is to the extent that we want to attract some of the retailers that have those mixes that you talked about, that will generate the kind of revenue streams that will help keep the overall tax burden on our residents as reasonable as possible. We need to make, create places that they want to go. Like, that used to be, a long time ago, you'd look at what you had and you would try to find retailers that would fit what you already had. I think now we have to go beyond that. I think now we actually have to find what do we want to have and create places for them to be. And since we are landlocked and have been for a long time, we don't have open fields that we can just build new shopping malls in. We have to figure out through land use and strategic thinking how to create places that will drive the future economic vitality of our community. Those are just some observations that I think leap out of your presentation and fit very well into some of the conversations that we're having contemporaneously. So thank you for the presentation.
Can I have one comment?
Sure.
I picked up on your comment Mayor, about the malls. So there's been a lot of news lately from the bond houses on Wall Street and from retail consultants. And I want to mention a few of those. 1/3 of all major malls in the United States, those are principally enclosed malls, about 300 of them are expected to close in the next 10 years. The bond default rate for the retail sector is expected to spike from 1% to 9% in 2017. And two of the key areas are apparel retailers and enclosed malls. It may almost be fortunate that we have not invested heavily in apparel stores. Open air centers like we have in Downers Grove are actually less risky because you usually you're depending on 1 or 2 or 3 large tenants. I've talked to some of my colleagues, my peers who represent communities where there's enclosed malls. They're nervous. Almost all of the apparel stores that have been closing nationwide locate in enclosed malls. Abercrombie and Fitch just announced they're closing about half their stores in the United States. The CEO of Urban Outfitters, which is very popular with teenagers, he just announced that the retail bubble has burst for the apparel industry, that more and more of those sales are online. So I think watching these trends is going to be important as we determine which type of retailers and what type of centers we want to have in Downers Grove.
Agreed. I wasn't suggesting that we
No,
run out and get a
Yes.
closed mall. I'm
Yes.
just pointing out some differences between
Yes.
communities on the list.
But those are big generators of
Right.
sales tax.
For now, is what you're saying.
Yes.
That could change. Thank you. Questions, comments from the rest of the council? Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. Something to point out as people drive around 75th Street and they saw the Michaels going, and then they find out that Ultra's going, and I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Michael's plan to keep a store in Downers Grove, that this one was just way too big and not part of their plan. So it wasn't like it was a failing store, but it, it wasn't in the plan. The same thing with Ultra. It isn't like Ultra isn't selling groceries or anything. That's more of a corporate thing rather than just a local, this store isn't working out. It's more of a corporate situation, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong. But, just the people drive by and they see 2 stores closing, they must think, oh, this, bad location. And it isn't a bad location, it's just a corporate situation. Am I right on that?
You are exactly right,
Okay.
Commissioner Waldeck. I spoke to the CEO of the company that owns Ultra Foods last Friday, and I said, why are you closing the store? He said, we got 12 stores in Illinois, we're going to close 6 of them right now. And they closed the 6 that they could close. They either had leases that were coming due, or they controlled the property. They weren't making money. They're closing the one in Lombard as well. And you are correct about Michael's. In 2014, they made it known that they were going to have a store on Butterfield Road and one in Bolingbrook. They weren't going to have 3, they were going to have 2. Lombard and Downers Grove were both competing for that Michael's store, which we ended up landing in August of 15 is when it opened at Finley Square. Those are decisions that I wish we could influence, but they're usually made in terms of companies making a decision not only where to place their stores and what trade areas, but also the size of the store. The Michael's store on Butterfield Road is a little smaller than the one on 75th. That's how all the Michael's stores in the future, that's their new prototype, they'll be smaller. That is probably the thing that hasn't gotten as much attention, is how the footprints are shrinking. 3 years ago, we had to work hard to save Best Buy. They needed to reduce their footprint on Butterfield Road. They were actually considering moving to another community where there was an opportunity for that. That center then was sold to someone that accommodated them and reduced their square footage by 10,000 square feet. So it's not just stores closing, it's they're reducing their square footage and therefore their rent. That's a very good point.
Questions, Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. As the mayor pointed out, some of these other communities are rising, but they're actually, when you look at the trade area comparisons, 3 other communities out of the 8 that have also fallen. I'm wondering if there are any commonalities among them. Are there any other lessons we can learn from some of our neighbors as we move forward?
I guess, Commissioner Jose, I won't know until we have those fourth quarter numbers in that AECom will analyze. So for example, we can look at Woodridge and look at each one of those segments and see how they're doing, how they did in 16 versus 15. I will tell you that, again, people who do what I do for a living are concerned because they read the news and they have stores that they're worried may close as well. I think we will have very soon for you that type of analysis to find out why some cities are doing a little better and than we are, especially in what segments. If there's a community that's heavily invested in apparel, that is a problem for them because those are the stores that are not doing well right now in terms of brick and mortar sales. I wish I had a better answer for you today, but we will have one very soon.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
So a couple of very brief observations. My reading on this indicates, as we compare brick and mortar with online sales, that online sales are grabbing substantial growth, but brick and mortar continues to grow at a relatively modest rate. So while retail sales are literally skyrocketing, brick and mortar is still growing at 0.5% or 1% per year. So the idea that brick and mortar is dead is just wrong.
Right, I agree, it's not dead at all.
And there's plenty of market share out there. But my reading of this also indicates that it's much more of a winner-take-all mentality. The towns that do well will do much better, and the consequences of not being competitive are far greater.
Yep.
And with sales tax being such a large component of this village's budget, we dare not risk being a loser, which means that it's more important than ever before that we be nimble, strategic, and aggressive in sustaining our sales tax base. Because it'd be nice to find another revenue stream, but I don't believe there are any that don't require taking money from the pockets of our voters and our citizens. Sales tax is a unique revenue stream in that we're basically collecting a share of the revenue people are going to spend any which way. Other revenue streams take money out of the pockets of our residents and our citizens. Sales tax, as long as we're not raising the rate, which I strongly oppose, increasing our share of retail sales is basically other people's money. And that's why I strongly believe that we need to focus on that. Let's see. There's many other, there's just a lot of detail here, but we need to adjust to the new realities and be nimble and aggressive because the village can't afford further declines in sales tax revenue.
And I think the movement toward, through the comprehensive plan, which I know the council's been working on and of course the staff very hard, is how can we make our sites more attractive for commercial development so that when we have an opportunity, we're not having to wait a year or two to get that site ready. And I think that's going to be very true for Butterfield Road, especially if we have one redevelopment site in particular. It'll be true for the Grove Shopping Center, and it's also true for Ogden. Again, I was meeting with Manager Fieldman. One of the other comments that I've gotten from some of our car dealers is because they have we have smaller lot sizes on Ogden Avenue. How many times have we heard that? They can't carry the type of inventory that other dealers can carry. So when someone goes to buy a car, they usually have in their mind the model, the color, the features they want on that car. And if you don't have that particular car on your lot, they're going to go to a dealer that does. And our car dealers do have a disadvantage in that they don't have the ability to carry the type of inventory, not only that they want to carry, but that is required by the car companies. Those inventories are monitored, and so I believe that as we move forward and we look at enhancing our ability to attract businesses and development to our major corridors, that should include Ogden. And how can we work together to increase those lot sizes? There's no easy answer. Commissioner White and I just talked about this. There's no easy answer. We would not have gotten Fresh Time had those two homes in the back of that Catalyst site been acquired years before. That project wouldn't have happened. So increasing lot sizes, frankly, it'll give us a chance to attract other car dealerships. Usually they need at least 3 to 4 acres. I wish I had some 3 to 4 acre sites on Ogden. So it's
Two comments.
a good point.
Two comments. First of all, just a very quick one. We're way better off with Packard Webb at that location than we are with the municipal building. So that, no matter what else happens with facilities, that was a huge win right there. Second of all, I just want to make it very clear that, based on my observations, the EDC is doing a terrific job at what I might, maybe this is anachronistic, call the front office. Selling the village to the outside world. Where the difficulty lies is really the village's responsibility, staff and council, to reconfigure our existing parcels to give you a better product to sell. So if I'm getting firm about the fact we need to do more on sales tax, it's not that the EDC is not doing their job, because they are doing their job. It's up to us to give you a site that a potential retailer is going to, because you don't have the power to rearrange how parcels are. That's our job. So that's why I just want to make that one part very clear, that I'm very stern about the fact that we need to make a lot of serious efforts to increase our sales tax base, but that's not pointing fingers at DDC.
Right, and although I'm open to constructive criticism, I think if there's probably one thing that we need to do a better job at the EDC, and that's making the village aware in advance of what the needs of the tenant are, right? What the needs of the business are. Because your excellent staff does a really good job of taking those opportunities, those first meetings, those submittals, and turning them around pretty quick. I'm not just saying this for his benefit, but when we met with the owner of the Lincoln dealership in Dave's office, the meeting took about 15 minutes. The guy walked out and said, "I've never been to a municipal meeting that was so fast." But we have some challenges, and I think one of them is having those development-ready sites. But also, I think we need to make it aware to the village. We're trying to attract these tenants. This is what they need. Because again, if you've got the tenants, you will get the retail centers. The tenant is king right now, because they have so many choices. They can demand the size they want, the location they want, and the rent they want to pay. So I think it's more and more is going to be our focus, the needs of the tenant in terms of the site, but also just what do they need to make that site work for them.
Well, I don't think we could ask for a better introduction to the discussion we're going to have a little bit later about our comprehensive plan. Obviously, we need to have development-ready sites, and that needs to be a very important consideration when we go through this document. It also explains why a lot of things need to be done in order to, not put the hand in the pockets of the taxpayers? Exactly. Although, just point of clarification, there are other taxes that do the same thing as sales tax, but they essentially are sales tax. Food and beverage tax, for example, performs the same purpose. The gasoline tax has been doing the same thing for many years. It's one that is shared by people who are visitors to our community, so it has that same effect of not necessarily being on the residents of Downers Grove. But I understood what you were saying. Other questions, comments? All right, well, I think our comments and questions were longer than your report, so thank you.
Thank you, and on behalf of the EDC, I just want to thank the village council, the village staff for their tremendous support. You give us great tools and a great environment in which to succeed, and we'll continue to work as hard as we can to get those results. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have the comprehensive plan. We'll see what kind of tools we can give you. I agree with Commissioner White 100% on that point. Very good, thank you. That ends item number 4, which was reserved for that presentation. But I will ask if there's any questions from the audience about anything that was in Mr. Cass's presentation, as long as people were patient enough to sit there and listen and hear all our questions or comments. don't have to run up because we're about to immediately go into public comment of a general nature. And if you have any questions or comments that you want to bring up with respect to what was just presented in that context, please be my guest. So we'll move to item 5, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. If there are any members of the audience at this point in time that have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, although including the presentation from the EDC, we'll hear those from you now. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Rich Cullivaney, 6825 Camden, Mayor, Commissioners, staff. I just wanted to offer my sincere thanks to the Village of Downers Grove for co-hosting the Landmarks Illinois Chicago Suburban Preservation Alliance meeting, along with Friends of the Edwards House. I wanted to thank Stan Popovich specifically. He did an outstanding job giving the history of historic preservation and also outlined some of the changes we've made in our revised HPO. I can tell you that we had a total of 66 people RSVP to the event from 20 municipalities in and around the Chicago area, from 30 separate organizations. The village was also well represented by the DG Historical Society and also Friends of the Edwards House, Pierce Downer Heritage Alliance. Mayor Tully did a fantastic job presenting the Frigos, the landmarking certificate for the Pierce Downer home, and that was a very exciting thing that was covered there. We also wanted to thank Willis Johnson, the president of Classic Cinemas, that we all know and love as the Tivoli, who talked about how he was able to use the federal tax credit for historic restoration and preservation of the Woodstock Theater. So it was a great event. And finally, we want to thank Avery Coonley for being a gracious host to give us just an outstanding historic venue, the only site in Downers Grove that's on the National Historic Register. So it was very well received. We've gotten great reports back from Landmarks Illinois. They said it was one of the best meetings ever. So well done, Downers Grove. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culvaney. Thanks for sharing that, and thanks for all the efforts of yours and everyone else with the Friends of the Edwards House in coordinating what was a terrific event in Downers Grove. I think it put us on the map with a lot of other communities when it came to efforts for historic preservation. Other questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Amy Gassman, 5320 Benton Avenue. I just want to let you all know of an event that's coming up next month. My husband Dave and I will be doing a presentation at Emmett's, sponsored by the Downers Grove Historical Society, the history and significance of the American Foursquare. We did a similar one sponsored by DG Frog last fall, and it was pretty successful. So now the Historical Society is going to sponsor one. Again, it's Wednesday, April 5th at 6:30 p.m. I believe you all have the flyer, and it is a free event. However, registration is recommended since space is limited, so please register soon. I know at least one of you already has, so thank you. And we hope to see you all at that. And by the way, you don't have to live in an American Foursquare to attend these, and you don't even have to like them. And they're educational, but they're also fun, so hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And remind me, how many American Foursquares are there in Downers Grove again? Approximately?
There's approximately 130.
130. Thank you. Other questions or comments of a general nature? Hearing none. Well, thank you for the ones that have been shared tonight. We'll move on to item 6, which is our consent agenda. For those of you who are scoring this meeting, item 6B as in boy has been removed from the consent agenda and will be addressed separately. So with that, I will ask for a motion from the council for approval of the consent agenda, absent item MOT-2017-7277, AKA consent agenda item 6B as in boy.
Mayor Tully, with the exception of item 6B, I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from anyone in the audience on any of these items? Questions or comments from any members of the village council on any of these items? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Burnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda sans 6B passes unanimously. And now do I have a motion to approve the updated Americans with Disability Act transition plan?
Martelli, I move that this council approve the update to the Americans with Disability Act Transition Plan.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this item from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, fellow members of the council. Did want to make quite a few comments on this, which is the reason why I pulled it from the consent agenda. It's not so consensual when you want to make extensive comments, but the ADA is something that's very important to many people, including myself, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank my fellow council members and the council members that I served with in the past for their consideration for the ADA and for helping me serve on the council and keeping me from falling on my face for a number of years. Probably the funniest comment I got from a member of the council was a number of years ago. Some of you might remember Commissioner Stan Urban, who once looked at me and said, "What the hell kind of blind are you?" And I said, you know, it's complex. But I also want to take the opportunity to thank particularly the staff who's been very cooperative. This is some mandate that's out there. We don't know in the current climate how many more mandates there's going to be or how much care there's going to be for things like the ADA. But I think the staff has done a great job with the plan of appointing people and putting all this together. There's been opportunity for public comment, so that's great. And for myself, staff has always tried to help me be the best council member I can be with the tools and the equipment. For example, there's some lighting on some stairs here to keep me literally from falling on my face. I have some software at home that I use here. So it often fails, but staff has put it on the computer. There's a lot of things that they've done, and I'm quite appreciative. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the general public, not only on my behalf, but many others. For example, when you walk down the street, people very often move out of the way, or they open doors for you, and that's it's often considered common courtesy, but you know, it is something special. It's something much appreciated. There are some people who don't want to move or want to skip in line and do things like that. That's very rare. Probably the most hurtful comment I've heard is that the Crips get all the good parking spaces. And I took high exception to that. I think everybody at one time or another, in a short period or a long period, suffers some sort of disability. For example, if you're driving and texting, you're not distracted, you're disabled. If you feel you can't drive without texting, please give me a call. I'll be happy to drive you around town, because I could do a better job. And I kid, but you know, you're disabled when you do that. But then there's also other disabilities. There's the handicap parking places. Sure, you know, many people have surgeries. You know, for example, knee surgeries, hip surgeries, heart surgeries, and any number of things, any number of reasons that they can temporarily use handicap parking. And when they have it available, they very much appreciate it. And that's all compliments to the ADA. Another thing is, you know, when you walk down the street and you look at the intersection, you see a mother pushing a stroller with a kid. Maybe she's got a dog along. Maybe she's got another kid who's walking. And to make matters worse, maybe she has a husband who's trying to help too. And they're trying to get across an intersection, and you can't always, you know, pay just attention to the light. So having those extra helps with vision, with the countdown versions and the audibles. So when you turn away, you know when it's really safe to cross that intersection. And then when you finally get to the other side, guess what? There's no curb. You got that little ramp there. and that's part of the ADA as well. So there's a lot, and when you go to airports and train stations and what have you, when you're traveling around, you got those little briefcases with the wheels. Thank heavens you don't have to do all those steps, all those curbs. These things are there to help the disabled and also to help you too. You know, you get an advantage out of it. So I just thought I'd call attention to that. I fully support the village's plan. I think they're doing a good job, the best they can. And they'll also take input from the public and suggestions how to improve things. So I thank my fellow council members for allowing me to take this extra time to comment on this. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments on this item? Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace? Aye. Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Burnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter 6B passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our consent agenda and on to our active agenda, item 7. We have one item on tonight's active agenda, that's item 7A. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance approving an amendment to planned unit development number 9 to allow construction of a medical office building at 1560 75th Street?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adopt an ordinance approving an amendment to planning development number 9 to allow construction of a medical office building at 1560 75th Street as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Are there any questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Burnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously, and it brings us to the end of our active agenda. Now to item 8, our first reading or our workshop agenda, where we turn a little less formal. This is an opportunity for items to be presented or represented or have continuing presentations for discussion and consideration purposes only. There will be no final action or vote taken on these items tonight. What we customarily do is ask for our village staff to introduce the items for discussion and consideration. We switch things up a little bit and usually let the village council ask questions first, then we'll go to the audience and then come back to the village council. So as I typically do, I will turn to our village manager, David Fieldman, to kick off the introduction of the 5 items that we have under our first reading tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. The first 2 items are resolutions granting historic landmark designation for 2 properties in our village. And I just want to take a moment to recognize Stan, our Director of Community Development. We all know him, but he is an expert in historic preservation, and he shows it every day. He showed it this weekend. He did an excellent job representing the village and our staff. So we're quite privileged to have his expertise and his knowledge here among us. And this is right on topic for Stan. So Stan, these 2 items, please.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Popovich. Good to see you again. It's been a long time since Saturday, and if people didn't know that you were an expert on historic preservation before Saturday, they certainly do now.
And I might be blushing, so.
Congratulations on such an outstanding job and being such a good ambassador and representative for our village.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure. So tonight I've got 2 items with regard to historic preservation. The first item's historic landmark at 4836 Middow Avenue, which is in the Prince Pond neighborhood at the northwest corner of Middow and Franklin. If we zoom in a little bit, you'll see it's along 2 brick streets there as well. The property is a classic gable L, vernacular architecture with some Queen Anne characteristics, a steeply pitched roof, a side gable and a front gable there, a front porch, and then some barge board, which is a little hard to see in this, which is up in the eaves around the gable there as well. The house qualifies under the historic preservation landmark criteria. It was built in 1893, and its distinguishing characteristics of the gable L. So staff is supporting the landmark request. If there's any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members of the council? I'll just add, as I always do, I'm thrilled to see this request, this petition coming forward. It's just another indication of the different environment that we have since making the recent amendments to the historic preservation ordinance. And secondly, most importantly, our appreciation, both from the council and the community, for the property owners who are making this request and making sure that this architectural historic location is not only something that can be enjoyed by current generations, but many to come. So thank you very much. Questions or comments from members of the audience? Final questions or comments from members of the village council? Thank you, Mr. Popovich.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to the next one, which is the landmark at 5099 Fairview Avenue, better known as the Fairview Avenue train station. So I will represent both the village and the applicant, since we're one. The train station, as you all know, is at the intersection of Fairview and Burlington Avenue here. If we zoom in, you can see it's right along the tracks, adjacent to the parking lot, a little bit off of Fairview Avenue. This is a picture of the train station looking eastbound towards Pepperidge Farm. You can see that it's meant to inspire rural characters. When it was built in 1916, we were a little bit more farmland than we are currently. The property was built and designed by the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. As I said, it's a rural image there, and it helped really develop Downers Grove, the same area as Gaston, developing not far away from here, and having some of the immigrants move out into with the train and move out this way. Then we have another picture from the parking lot. It's a gambrel roof, which is unique here in the village. We don't see a lot of those in the village. And the unique thing about this is there was a station master's quarters on the second floor, I think up until about the late 70s as well. So there's a little bit of information of that unique aspect of the train station in your packet. And then the train did help expand, like I noted, help expand Downers Grove. Landmark criteria, again, it's met. It was built in 1916, so we're over 50 years of age. And then we believe it's a source of civic pride, our train station, so taking the lead on historic preservation, we are very excited to bring this petition before you tonight. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you at this time again, Mayor.
Thank you. And I do like to say it's continue to lead by example. This would be the second governmental building in our community that is up for landmark status, so it's terrific to see. Questions or comments from members of the council? Questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome back.
Hi, Rich Calavani, 6825 Camden, Downers Grove, Chair of Friends of the Edwards House. I just wanted to thank the village for leading by example here and having this as the second civic-owned building. We also would encourage other government entities to come forward and landmark their significant properties, including the museum, campus, 2 historic homes there, and perhaps things like the Lincoln Center. I grew up like 2 blocks from this place, so it has a special place in my heart. I actually sold newspapers out of this train station years ago. And for those of us who grew up on the east side of Downers Grove, we had just kind of a neat little thing going on there. There was a Leo's restaurant that served coffee and donuts in the morning, and people who took this train would grab a coffee and donut before they came over. There was an IGA store there. Across the street was a place called Prince Castle, who you may recognize became Cock Robin, now where the White Fence Farm is. So that was a special part of the community, and those of us who went sledding and ice skating at Hummer Park would come back to this place. It would be sort of this delightful warming area. It was never as special as the Main Street train station. We always had to stop at 3 or 4 different places before we got into the city. We didn't have these 24-minute non-stops. But for those of us who grew up on the east side of the town, it's a special place, and we really appreciate that you're willing to step forward to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Final thoughts from the, see, every now and then someone has one. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. Just picking up on something Mr. Calavani said, if you ride out of Fairview or back into Fairview, you still have to make those extra 3 or 4 stops. But when you live closer to Fairview, it's well worth it. I thought this was a tremendous read. I really enjoyed the staff report on this, especially the bit about the marching band that came out to dedicate St. Mary's and literally got off the train and marched straight up Fairview. But that was really good. So thanks for putting all that together. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments? Very good. Next item, please.
The next item, item C, is continuing discussion of the village's facilities sustainability plan. Here to present background information on this item is our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker.
Good evening, Mr. Baker.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you, Dave. This item does provide an opportunity for continued discussion on the topic of the village facilities sustainability plan. There's an extensive amount of information available on the village website for anybody who'd like to understand what's been going on for the past several months on this topic. That information includes this report that I'm holding here, which was released on February 24th and provides detailed information, including several development options for consideration as the village looks for a solution for its facility needs. Within this report, in addition to detailed information about each of 4 development proposals, is also a 3-page executive summary that provides a nice overview describing the process that we've gone through, information about the condition of the police station and village hall, which really prompted this effort in the first place, the revenue sources that are available to fund the project, and the extent to which each of the development proposals could help fill the gap and provide additional sources of funding to support construction of a combined police station of Village Hall. This represents the 3rd public meeting that we've had in the last several weeks. There is a Coffee with the Council event taking place this Saturday, March 18th. It will occur in this building in Village Hall at 9 o'clock in the morning. That'll provide additional opportunity for informal discussion on this topic. Residents can submit any comments they have to dgfacilities@downers.us. I'll say that again, dgfacilities@downers.us is the email address we've established for resident comments. And this item is scheduled to appear on next Tuesday's agenda seeking council direction. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. As mentioned, this is an ongoing conversation that will continue. So this is just a further opportunity for discussion by the council or input from members of the audience. I'll start with members of the council, if anyone wants to add anything that's been said. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. We've been sort of reconsidering this thing for, I don't know, about a month now. And I'd like us to continue to press forward. I think we're sort of all thinking along those same lines, but I guess as it relates to the current potential for different sort of paths forward in front of us, I'd really like to encourage everybody my colleagues to give some serious consideration to the office building proposal. The details, financial details, obviously are all online, and they're pretty well vetted out and well described to everybody. I think as I've talked with residents and gotten input from folks across town, there are serious concerns. Now, whether they're statistically well-founded or not, I don't think I know the answer to that, frankly. But our development downtown pace is such that it's given people a lot of pause. And I think that both this or the apartment building project proposals accomplish our goals. Clearly, there's a small financial difference between the two. But I think in the first meeting that we had down at the table down there, I kind of described it as potentially a trade-off, the cost of reducing density or not going as far as we could with density, the cost of mitigating concerns that neighbors and residents have relative to traffic. There's still an enormous amount of good that would come from that proposal, from Washington Avenue work to providing an amenity downtown to providing a vehicle by which we replace 2 village facilities. There's a ton of good in that. Now, I personally could support either of the apartment building proposals as well. I mean, I want my colleagues to understand that. I want the residents who are listening to understand that. I think that moving forward is absolutely the right thing to do. But we're getting kind of close, I think, to trying to make a decision. And so I wanted to make everybody clear. I really think that pressing forward is the first thing we should commit to doing. And secondly, I think we should do it down a path that looks and feels a lot like that office building. So I think it's time to start laying it out there where we feel each of us lies and see if we can't come to a spot that gets as many of us as possible all pointed and rowing in the same direction. So there you go.
Thanks, Commissioner. Other comments from council at this point? Commissioner Earl?
Oh, yes. We have been talking about this for a long time, not me specifically, but sitting in the back, I remember since 2007 we've been talking about this. And I think, interestingly enough, in all of that time we've been talking about this, and it's been so urgent, we've never set any money aside specifically to do this. It's just, I don't know why, but I believe that setting some money aside and weighing our options carefully then gives us more options. And I don't see the absolute rush. This isn't in a TIF that's expiring, so we have to hurry up and develop something so that our TIF isn't underwater. This would be a new TIF, but more options would be available at possibly a better price or a lower density if we could buy down some of the options. They would be more cost efficient to take some of these other lower density projects. I think we haven't done any of that. We haven't saved any money, and we haven't given a chance for the development that's gone on downtown to finish up and play out. Where you rightfully said, Mayor, it should have developed over, a 20-plus year time frame, but because of the recession, which of course none of us could have foreseen, but because of the recession, there was a large hiatus in the development of these buildings, and then a giant rush at the end to take as much density as we could and try to cram it in there so that our TIF came out right side up, which we really had to do in the financial interest of this village. I don't see why we are in such a darn hurry, especially now that we have a little wiggle room in the police station with the DUCOM, the move to DUCOM for the communication center, and having a little more room for the police station for them to move around in and settle in, that we have to decide something this go round with no money saved and hurry up and pick one of these four. I just don't see the advantage in it. I think taking our time, not putting up something that's going to eat into our own TIF revenue. If we have competition filling these apartments, that's what it will be. It will drive down prices in the whole of the downtown, and we will have a glut of apartments. Then the price for the rents go down, then the taxes for those buildings go down, then the revenue to pay off what we borrowed for these buildings will also go down. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we do that. I think giving it a little time to play out and to take the natural course with the thought of dedicatedly saving some money towards this and saying in 2 years we will revisit this again. We will have saved X amount of dollars, and we are better prepared to pick from options that might come forward then. So that's where I stand on this, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't understand the idea that we're rushing into this. We've been talking literally about this issue for a decade. We've got 4 proposals in front of us, and they all have at least a certain amount of merit. And I think it's really a difference in philosophy, I suppose. And it was encapsulated, I thought, by a question that a resident asked me about 4 years ago. And it really, I thought, boiled down the differing philosophies that are on display here. Are you a do something or a do nothing? And I fall into the do something category because we've got demonstrated problems. Whether we've got an additional bit of wiggle room in the police station or not, the fact remains that the building is in terrible disrepair. And we can argue about why we got there, but we're there. This building is quite old and is also in need of a significant amount of repair and renovation. We can pour money into them, or we can do something different that I think is better off in terms of an investment in our community and better off for our taxpayers. we have to also consider the idea that if we delay, the costs are only going to rise. You know, we know what roughly the systems are that need to be replaced in these buildings, or if we build a new building, we've still got rising labor costs, rising material costs, rising interest rates. We're expecting 2 to 3 hikes this year alone. The time to move is now. We can always find a way to nitpick the ideas. We can always find a way to say no. But the problem with that is our problems remain and they only grow. We need to solve things and do it now, and do it in a responsible manner for our taxpayers. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments, or anyone else want to jump into this day? And obviously, this is an issue that there appropriately are many different perspectives on. I think it's almost cliche to say that if everybody thought the same way, we wouldn't need to have 7 of us. So I welcome a dialogue with different viewpoints on this topic. And I can only present mine, which is probably the longest viewpoint on this, having considered this issue longer than anyone else up here. In my opinion, it is a fact this is long overdue. It is only by happenstance and misfortune that this isn't already done. And I would hate to, through paralysis or fear, to once again shoot ourselves in the foot by not acting. I don't agree with the characterization of the downtown TIF. It wasn't there was a rush at the end to try to put money in the TIF. It was the opportunities didn't exist. But when they did, we took advantage of them. And that's what's important here, is we have opportunities to take advantage of. These opportunities won't necessarily be around. I don't know what the sort of chimerical that will present itself down the road. We went out to the market and asked very specifically for proposals, and this is what we got. I don't think we should just sit and wait and see what happens. That's not going to generate anything of value. It is a process, as we just heard from our economic development director. You need to go out and solicit proposals for these opportunities. The downtown TIF is now where it's at because opportunities present themselves, and in some situations, the village went out and facilitated those opportunities when they were available and took advantage of them. If it wasn't for the recession, we would have taken advantage of them years ago. True, they would now be there and they'd be matured and we would know whether they're full or empty or whatnot, but part of that is almost besides the point because there's a certain amount of turnover in any apartment condo building. So I don't know if the occupancy means all that much or the rents necessarily mean all that much because it's the EAV that really matters. And we assess a certain property value and we collect what we assess. I realize the assessed value has some role in that with rents, but I don't think it's as much as is being predicted. And it's really no more speculation to say that something else might come down the road than it is to say that, well, they might not be filled if they get built. And that's assuming that we do apartments. And I haven't heard that we're necessarily going to be doing apartments. I just heard Commissioner Barnett actually advocate for something that wasn't apartments, so we wouldn't be dealing with rents, we wouldn't be dealing with occupancy rates, we wouldn't be dealing about any of those concerns. It would be an office building. And I think a lot of the same fears that are associated with apartments maybe don't exist within office buildings. So I think we have viable options in front of us right now that the convergence of current circumstances are, this project is decades overdue. Sort of like you have a problem with your body, you don't go to the doctor, you ignore it, eventually it's going to kill you. And I'm not suggesting we're going to die from this, but I don't know if the police department is going to get a CALEA certification like they have in the past, because every time we have a CALEA certification, the number one thing that is said to me by that board is you must fix this police station problem. And that's 2 times now. I don't know about the 3rd time. Time will hurt us. That is a fact. That is not speculation. Costs will go up. If anybody in this room thinks the costs of construction are going to go down, please come talk to me. I don't think anyone is going to say that with a straight face. Cost of money will go up. If anyone thinks the cost of money is going to be any less than what it is right now in the next 2-3 years, please come see me because I don't think that's true. We increase the risk of a major maintenance issue having to be addressed with either Village Hall or the police station, and what that means is we actually have to sink money into a facility that we've decided we're not going to keep. It's like a car. If the car repair is $5,000 and the car is only worth $6,000, you're not going to put $5,000 into it. So there's a very real risk that we may sink a significant amount of money into two buildings that we're all talking about tearing down. We might as well light that money on fire. So there are real harms into waiting. I'm pretty sure that if we wait 2 years, we will not have one of the proposals, maybe two of the proposals that are currently on the table, because they're not going to wait 2 years. They're going to go somewhere else. So if we like these proposals, we think they're a good fit, then I think it's our obligation to go forward with them. So I'm not necessarily set on which of the paths we go down or what flavor or hybrid or variation of the different proposals that are before us we might pursue. But I am absolutely as adamant as my colleague is the other direction that we must go forward. We have some terrific opportunities before us. I've seen this movie 3 times. This is the best we've had, and with the macroeconomic circumstances, with what we know are rising costs, what we know are deteriorating conditions, what we know is the high risk we're going to put in money to something that we're going to basically be tearing down. I just think it would be, in my opinion, irresponsible not to move forward. I understand for some this may seem to be happening fast, but it all depends on your perspective. From my perspective, this has been moving like molasses uphill, and in some respects is a fundamental paralysis by analysis. I think the time has come to act. I think we've got great opportunities, and we need to take advantage of them, no different than when we had opportunities to make the downtown TIF viable. We took advantage of those opportunities. It wasn't that we were rushing, it was what the opportunities presented themselves. So I'm not necessarily saying that the medical building isn't the right way to go, or apartments are the right way to go, although I think the medical option would eliminate a lot of the concerns that have been voiced about what might happen with apartments, or whether we have too many apartments. But let's face it, it's really speculation. There's no data that says this is going to happen or that's going to happen. I think concerns that are not necessarily driven by data. What we do know is the cost of money, cost of construction, and the likelihood that we're going to have to invest dollars into antiquated facilities. Those are facts. Those are going to happen. That we know. So I appreciate the passion and the desire to wait, but I couldn't disagree more.
Well, it just strikes me that the one project that we all looked at and went, ooh, when we all saw it was the townhouses. Nice density, they could be nice looking, it'd be a good fit for the area. Financially, it's the worst option for us. Yet, had we saved some money, had we actually been thinking about this for 10 years, we should have saved some money, and we could have taken those townhouses, and we would have had exactly what we wanted. But we didn't do either of those things. And so now, our first choice as a council, oh, okay, we're gonna go put that one on the side. What else we got that could work? Well, then, if that's what we're waiting for, if it's just we're taking the first thing that's gonna fit again, why? Why can't we have what we want with a little forethought?
Well, 2 things, Commissioner. Number 1, we have saved money. Now, we haven't created a giant piggy bank in the parking lot and put change in it. But my reading of the documents, both this proposal and the prior proposal, we set aside the money that had been going to the library debt. We could have done something else with that. We didn't. We saved it, set it aside. In fact, we were criticized for having not given it back to the taxpayers last week. So that's a savings of money. The dollars for the sidewalks, we could have done something else with that. We didn't. We set it aside for this project. And I'm forgetting the third element. But the point is we have actually set, thank you. We actually have set money aside for this project.
The last year, the last 6 months.
Okay, but we have actually set money aside. It's been more than 6 months because it was for the prior proposal too, which goes back more than 2 years. And then the proposal before that in 2007, I believe, I don't know if we ever got to the financing stage on that, but I think it was contemplated to be done with bonds. So it wasn't contemplated to save money, to set aside money, if there was a financing plan in place. But the point is we have actually set dollars aside. for a project. And the other thing I want to say is this isn't the first thing that came along. We went out with an RFP. And
I
we very
understand that.
specifically said, here's what we want. Can you provide a proposal to us, or multiple proposals, that will fit within our parameters? To me, it's very similar to what we did on Acadia on the Green. We didn't take the first proposal that came along. We actually went out and gave parameters to the development community and said, can you give us what we want, which has to fit within these parameters? And we now have 4 proposals that fit within those parameters. Let's remember, we asked for these. This isn't...
No, you asked for these, I didn't.
Fair enough. Yes, I did ask for this. I asked for an opportunity to try to see if we could get the best outcome for the community. I did ask for that, yes.
To be fair, the council asked for that.
To be fair, I wasn't part of the council then.
I'm not arguing with that.
I'm ready to offer some comments now, unless you want.
So I just wanted to straighten a few things out, but I think the question from Commissioner Barnett was, is there a path that folks are in favor of? I think we've heard from 2 commissioners.
Yeah, I'm going to
Commissioner
sneak in
Wallace.
before Commissioner White here, who's going to speak longer than I will. Maybe, sorry, I shouldn't assume that, but I'm going to. I've stayed pretty quiet on this topic because I wanted to hear some feedback from the community. And I feel like all of my colleagues up here have valid points and are passionate about how they feel, and I completely understand that and respect the thoughts and opinions of everyone else. I feel like the opportunities that we were presented in some ways are wonderful and in some ways are very flawed. I guess I would like the community to know that if we go with the medical office building or with the townhomes, that those do not fit in our budget, and we will need to find a way to cover that cost, which may be out of your pockets. And if that's okay, great. And if it's not, then I just want that to be something that you consider. The feedback that I've gotten is that right now another high-density building is not very favorable. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I do want to say, however, that I agree that something needs to be done and that we need to act in some way. That is all there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White.
I don't yet have a position, because there are, as Commissioner Wallace said, there are strong arguments in favor of virtually all the positions. It's balancing out. But I do want to make some comments about the larger process. My recollection, and the reason that I supported going out for these bids, was to help us decide whether or not to spend $14 million expanding the police station. At this point, I don't think there's anybody up here who says we should just spend that $14 million on the police station and come back to this in 5 years. I think it's unanimous that spending $14 million now for a police station addition is a bad choice. As a consequence, getting the bids was a net positive. Whether we choose to act on them or not, having the bids was a net positive. Getting those bids was the right thing to do, because we see the value that would come from selling the western portion of the Civic Center parcel. Second, there's a comment that this has been delayed through happenstance and misfortune. I'm extraordinarily grateful for the last set of happenstance and misfortune, which did delay this project, because if it hadn't been delayed by David Olson and DG4RG, there'd be a police station where Packy Webb is. And I think we dodged a bullet with that. And I think we all should be grateful for that. That leaves us with where we're going forward. In my mind, the only option that absolutely will go away if we delay is DuPage Medical. My understanding, I could be wrong, my understanding is that they need a facility in this general vicinity relatively soon. I don't believe, I could be wrong, I don't believe they'll wait around. So if we come back in 2 years, I don't believe that option will be on the table. We all like the townhomes. I'm not sure they're economically viable because the developer's not willing to guarantee both phases. The developer's not willing to commit to buying all the parcels. Maybe the sale of townhomes in 2 years will still be an option. I'm skeptical that the townhomes will still be an option in 2 years, because I don't believe that fits the future market trends. It may be what we like most, but I'm not sure that option is going to stick around. very confident the apartments will remain an option in 2 years. They could be a stronger option in 2 years. So I don't believe we have the option of setting money aside and then going back to some of the current, of the four that are presented. Those options, they could be, but I don't think they will be. So we come back to the basic question, which I've not heard yet enough from the community on. Is the community willing to pay higher taxes for less density, or for an office building instead of apartments? And I see strong arguments on both sides of that fact. Although my takeaway from the referendum in 2015 is people didn't want to spend higher taxes on municipal facilities. But that's, so we get back to the, so I talked about a number of considerations, a number of factors, but it comes down basically, are we willing to increase, you know, would the community prefer to pay more taxes and avoid the higher density apartments, or would we rather pay less taxes? And it's not merely the taxes for that, it's the ability to free up money to avoid increasing taxes for operations too. That's all I have. Unfortunately, we don't have to vote tonight.
No, I don't think that was the intention, but I think Commissioner Barnett asked a fair question, and for those who wanted to weigh in,
absolutely
weigh in. We don't have to. I know Commissioner Waldeck, who I'm going to turn to in a moment, actually said he wanted to wait and hear what people said on Saturday.
You took all my words.
I'm looking,
I wanna hear
I'm looking
people
for
say it
public
Saturday,
input
too.
because we're, you know, we're talking around here, and some, you know, some of us show favoritism. There's the idea that we can't predict the future. In many ways, we, you know, you could say this will go up and that'll go up, but then I look to the future isn't too positive. I'm deeply concerned about what's going on. So I don't share the saying, you know, we have to act now because everything else is, you know, it will get worse. It could get really worse. And then we'll have to go back to the taxpayers anyway. Some of the speeches that I hear, oh, we have to act now, it sounds like a commercial. It's what we heard 2.5 years ago. And it was the residents that put on the brakes, fortunately. So, you know, we can't predict the future, but we have to look at revenues, we have to look at expenses, we have to look at services, and then, you know, those are three things I always look at in trying to make those decisions. And the fourth one, I just added this year, is timing. Timing is everything, and to me, timing is still a question. But anyway, Commissioner White kind of capsulized most of it, and I'm looking forward to a lot of public input. And also an idea when we say, oh, we're going to raise taxes. You know, if you take this, you're going to raise taxes. I'd like to see what the projection would be on the increase in taxes. For example, was it for every $28,000 we spend, taxes would go up about $1. So you take whatever the projection is. If it's $1 million, you divide it by 28,000. That's how much you can expect. I think you can project taxes might go up. So, and if we could present that as part of the, you know, you show the pretty picture, you show the numbers, and just kind of come up with a rough estimate as to what it would cost the taxpayer, and if they're willing to put that kind of money into whatever choice they prefer. So,
Just want to interject really quickly. Those numbers are in the book.
Yeah, those are there.
So we know how much taxes have to go up. And it's the, if it, pages 14, for example, page 8, page 14, because there's four different options. You look at the village tax revenues column, and you take out the 1.1 million, and that's how much you'd have to increase taxes. So we actually already have all those numbers.
for an individual taxpayer.
Well, no, for the aggregate, and then...
Okay,
yeah.
so if you divide that by, roughly by the 28,000, or if you want to go 25,000, then you can kind of get the average taxpayer an idea what their individual tax might go up.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what I'm saying.
But
the
gross amounts are in the book.
Play with it a little bit.
Actually, if I could jump in, Mayor?
Please.
council questions responses from February 28th actually do give the impact to average homeowner breakdown for each of the developments. For the medical office, it was between $1,122 and $1,683 a year. And it goes down to the apartment options that actually would result in $1,496 to $3,839 less in taxes per year. It all depends on a number of factors, as has been talked about. But we do have the breakdowns, the February 28th council question.
We need to, when we're having it at the
We'll put it up on the
Village
wall.
Hall. Yeah, no, with the pictures.
Yes.
So Mayor, I'll leave
Absolutely.
it to you to send out the call to get all the residents out here to show up and present their opinion.
Please show up on Saturday. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. I want to characterize a couple of things, starting with the TIF. You know, I was trying to think of, and I'll see if I can word this correctly, but I remember when I was a million years ago when I was thinking about engineering school, and I went to visit Milwaukee School of Engineering. There was a poster up that said, it was a picture of something having to do with the space program, and it said something to the effect of chance favors the prepared. And this village, this body, our staff, absolutely are prepared for chance. And we can suggest it was fortune or misfortune, we can talk about how we got there, but what we've done is prepare. When we talk about wanting to know resources and wanting to know service levels and wanting to know expectations and revenues and expenses, that's known. When we talk about we want to know what really a minimal or best case facility we need, started in '07. In 2012, we did another study of our existing problems. We came up with a potential plan which didn't fly in '15, but it took us a lot farther down the road of identifying what it is we needed to build. And here we are, we do know that. We want to know how much money it costs per household, we got that too. There is no crystal ball that's going to tell us that 2 years from now things are going to be better or things are going to be worse. What we know is a variety of things have all come together into a situation where we have 4 proposals in front of us and we are in fact very prepared. We know exactly what it's going to cost. Exactly. I mean, within the range of construction projects to be sure, but we know what it's going to cost. We know what we could or could not build. The only question is how much money do we want to spend? Do we want to spend any or not? And I think that I expressed my opinion before about which one we should spend because we're talking about, $15 here. And before we, diminish that, because it can be diminished, $15 is real dollars, I get that. But any plan from 2007 through 2.5 years ago, through 6 months ago, through today, every single one of those plans, Mary, you alluded to it earlier, spent new or re-levied tax dollars to one degree or another. Every single one of those did that. 7, it was let's just bond out and build new. A few years ago, it was some combination of things that we never really vetted through and never went to RFP for, but it spent those very same revenue sources, Mayor, that you talk about, as did this repair the Village Hall thing. Every single plan since 2007 has spent new tax dollars. We know what those are, and it's time to move forward, in my opinion. But to suggest that they're not quite known, or we're not sure, or we want to know how it breaks down, that is all known. It is all known, absolutely. And it's been available online for a while now, but it's been certainly available to all of us for a couple of months, or at least a month and a half. So we should all spend the next week and next weekend's listening session at Coffee with the Council, and certainly any input we get, soliciting that input and taking it to heart and trying to figure out and trying to discern exactly what our community would like us to do. But no decision should be made to move or not move based on the idea that we're not sure we have the information about what we're going to do or what might we do or why we should do it or how much it would cost. That's just not the case. It's been a torturous path to get here, but it's been a good one that the fortune from it has been that through all this, we have gotten this prepared. We have gotten this clear of a definition of our options and our choices. We should continue to act. And I think that, when we talk about the TIF, Margie mentioned the TIF, it might feel like a rush at the end because that's when the timing hit. But the TIF, again, was a preparation. It was a plan that predates everybody Mayor, I think you too, right?
Even me.
Of suggesting, hey, we've got a problem, we need to invest in the longevity of our community, particularly the heart of our downtown, and in 22 years ago or 21 years ago, we decided to venture down that road. It depended on these kinds of developments. Could we predict exactly when they're going to come? Certainly not. In 1997 or whenever it was, we certainly couldn't predict the 2009 financial problem. But we planned, and we prepared, and we made those plans. That's exactly what we're doing now. And so whether it happens by a little bit of chance at the end, or it happens exactly the way you map it out, it's not for lack of preparation, it's not luck, it's not hoping that there's some sort of a magic 8-ball at the end. This has been well thought out, well laid out, and is a function, we are here as a function of preparation.
Commissioner Rowe.
I understand what you're saying, Bob, but the one thing that is certainly going to change no matter what we do is the character of the downtown, just by the amount of buildings that are coming, and apartments and condos that are coming online in the next 18 months. And that itself alone is going to have a huge impact on the character of downtown and any choice we might make. And I'm simply suggesting that we hold off making a decision in case we make a decision that's going to add to problems that haven't quite manifested themselves yet, or with the new developments that are coming online, and or unfilled apartments that are not sitting on the market that could negatively affect our paying off what we have decided to do. I think that 2 years gives us protection in the character of our downtown. It gives us time to assimilate our new residents into the fabric of downtown, and it gives us time to better decide what should be there and how. Maybe it is apartments. I'm not saying that it might not be. But all the apartments coming online within 18 months of each other just doesn't make any sense. And adding another potential 250 to 350 units on top of what is already 400 to 450 in the immediate area. It just strikes me as we're already changing it considerably just by the nature of how things played out. I'm not saying that was wrong. Had we had our druthers, I'm sure we would have preferred these buildings to come online one at a time, over the course of the last 10 years, but that wasn't possible. They are coming online. I'm grateful for that. But we weren't able to be as maybe picky in the design guidelines that we would have liked. We weren't, so we have buildings that are a little bit more not in keeping with some of the character that we were hoping for. But we trudged forward and we went, okay, we're going to do this. But we have no reason to have our backs up against the wall. We can take a little time and make sure what we put here is the right fit for the town. And that is all I am simply asking. I am not advocating for one or another. Maybe we can do the 350. That would be fantastic. Maybe 350 apartments fits here fine. I can't tell you that today. I foresee being able to make that decision much easier in 2 years because we know for sure that it's within a comfortable range for us.
I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, let me make clear, that was why I started the conversation tonight the way I did. Those are very real, very fair concerns, which I share. But I also, Commissioner Jose is exactly right, and I think the mayor reiterated, this isn't getting any cheaper. 2 years from now is not going to be a less expensive proposition. If this is $11 out of a household or minus 14 out of a household, in 2 years this is going to be 25 out of a household and minus 5. It's going to be a more expensive proposition 2 years from now, irrespective of the path we choose. There's no reason to believe otherwise. So it's that, for me, it's weighing that the cost associated risk of waiting against, something that I think is a perfectly decent development. I think you're totally fair and reasonable, and I think a lot of people share that same concern. What's this look like when all these people are actually in these places?
Well, the only thing I'll just add to that is, let's not assume that we're adding a bunch of people. There's an option on the table that I think doesn't raise the two specters that I've heard from not just Commissioner Earl, but others as well, which is you're going to change the character of the downtown by putting up another high-rise residential unit, and you're going to add 350 or so units to the downtown when we don't know how the current projects are going to go. But there's one project on the table, that's kind of why I thought you raised it.
It is, that's exactly why.
It doesn't raise either one of those specters. Number one, it would not add 350 units, it wouldn't add any units, the medical building. So it doesn't have any of those concerns about how do the other apartments and condos in town play out, because they're apples and oranges. And then in terms of character, again, I would challenge anyone to tell me that the character of a medical building, a modern medical building, is going to be markedly worse than a ball bearing plant that was functionally dysfunctional since 1960, whatever it was, 1963. So there is an option on the table. It doesn't raise the character downtown specter, and it doesn't raise the concern, which you're not alone in raising this concern. What will happen if we add another 200, 300, whatever number of units? And I'm not suggesting that's the way to go, but I think that is at least one reason not to wait, because it wouldn't, neither one of those two specters are implicated by that proposal.
Yeah, there's
The question then does come, though, do the economics of that work out? Is the $15 per door or whatever it is to the community worth going forward, not changing the character and not putting in all that density? And I think that's the question that all of us are saying we want to hear more input from tonight, as well as, just in case you fell asleep, tonight and on Saturday and beyond.
Mayor, two other things.
I just want to point that out. Don't automatically assume that it's high-rise building with 350 units.
But in 2 years, that may be, we may be able to assimilate that, and it may be to our advantage tax-wise.
No, sure, but Commissioner White's going to tell us all the other places that we can put 350 units in the downtown, so we won't need to do that. Well, that's the next conversation.
No, that's parking.
That's the next conversation. And he's got parking units, he's got everything. There's a park in there, too.
But we can't TIF those.
Sure we can.
Hey, Mayor.
No.
Mayor, I want to mention too, because I'm in the mode tonight of advocating, although not others are that far along, I realize that the non-apartment building offers two other elements that I think are important. One is that there's an actual amenity draw that's added to the downtown, and I think that's worth considering. There's some value to that. But the other thing is, there's a parking function that's kind of in play that I can't totally quantify it, but when we have Grove Fest, or we have Village Hall meetings, or we have these various activities, we would be retaining, likely, a lot of open surface parking where it exists today. And so, I think there's some value to that, too. I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of it. The $15 is probably going to be the question that drives a lot of folks' minds. But there are that $15 comes with some benefits too. There's a buy of that as well. It's not just an added expense for a little different character. There's some potential actual benefits that you wouldn't get with an apartment building, so.
Right, and then let's not forget about Washington Avenue too.
Which gets fixed either way,
Well, yeah, that's going to happen, although our options are slightly different depending, that's very important. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Earl raises some very salient and I think good points about the changing character of downtown. And I think we have to keep in mind that whether it's the office building or whether it's apartments, it is going to be a change in the character of downtown. It's just a matter of how much and which direction you feel is the better change. We don't have any current 2 to 3 story medical offices in downtown. That could result in quite a bit of traffic at different times of day, the occasional ambulance traffic, et cetera. Conversely, a 5 or 6 story apartment building brings along with it its own challenges. But one way or the other, regardless of which one we pick, we're in a position as owner of this property to have a bit more input, or dare I say control, over what the design looks like. and how we might be able to soften it. And I think we should keep some of those in mind as we're considering whichever option we end up going with.
Fair point. Should we open it up to the audience and then come back?
Sure.
We'll open it up to the audience for comments, questions. We gave you a little bit of something to chew on and warm up before the comments. And we'll come back. Obviously, we're not deciding anything tonight. Not even going to decide anything on Saturday. Good evening, welcome.
Steve Frost, 945 Burlington Avenue, 405. The excitement of waiting till Saturday was too much, so I thought I'd present it. I'd asked the council to reject the high-end density options because the traffic is going to be simply too heavy, and I don't think that the proposed fixes for traffic are going to be sufficient and won't really hold up to reality in the future.
Thank you for sharing your comments, appreciate it. And we'll take them again on Saturday if you'd like. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. I didn't want to miss a Tuesday speaking. This past week, I tried to get a grasp on what the size of this development would be. And I looked around physically and electronically, what's in the downtown area and the central part of Downers. There's nothing that is quite as large as this. What I did find was the residence at the Grove, which is located north of Butterfield and west of 355. It's composed of 3 8-story buildings, 90 units each building, so that gives us 270. We're in the middle of density here. There's also 24 townhomes on the western edge. I think the big difference, and that, I drove through that, parked the car, and I looked it over, and it's a very nice community. The 3 high-rises seem to be well done. The difference is, that was built on 16.25 acres. The village is going to sell 3.54. So the density is just enormous. And I've heard from this dais that there's no new land being created. So this community, we need to develop the land in a responsible way. And I don't think just looking at the revenue that it's going to produce is responsible. We need to look at this density. Is this what Downers Grove is about? That we're going to sell this piece of land for the dollars that we can get. I think we need to look at the other options over this high density, and hopefully by Saturday I'll have something that you can look at and perhaps have another alternative around the same idea of what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And once again, you put your finger right on the dichotomy there, as lower density means less revenue, more density means more revenue, and that's a community decision. We certainly have the ability to move that slider scale where we want it.
How you doing?
Good evening, welcome.
Hi, my first meeting, Mike Loretto. I live at 518 Blackburn Court. I come from a landlocked town. Originally, I was from Berwyn, and I moved out here to Downers Grove with my family. I do understand, though, the importance of when you have land and property available to build on, it's time to start building on and do something with it. I think the best thing I could say is almost everything we do is a tax increase. Almost every time we want to make an improvement to our town, it's going to be a tax increase. The biggest thing that residents have to realize is we're investing in our community. We're investing in our city that we want to see keep growing. I am very much in favor of the office building and the medical facility going in. As far as apartment buildings go, not the biggest fan. I come from a city where it's, pretty much almost about 30% of my town is apartment buildings. But I am very much in favor of investing into anything that can generate revenue and help us out. in any way. But if we're talking about a, what was it, $15 increase on our taxes, I'm all for investing in our village and making it better. So I think that's the way that you guys sell it to the residents and get them involved and get them out there is, how can we make our village better? We already know it's going to cost money. Just what can we do to get more people involved and get them out there to talk about it? So appreciate it. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity on the first night here. So.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Baker will give you a village pin for the first meeting. Every resident gets one. Thank you very much. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? I was going to give them mine. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Mary Blanchard. Thanks for letting us speak tonight. I thought about this over the last few weeks as we've been here, and definitely wanted to address, because the question did come up, are we willing to spend money on taxes? And I agree with my fellow resident. When you're talking about $15 a year, it's a burger and a soda. So, I mean, if we think about that in context, certainly, tax increases aren't everyone's favorite thing, but it's definitely a way to reinvest in our community. DuPage Medical Group is one of the top physician practices in the country. There couldn't be a better partner, I don't think, to put a medical office building in if that's the route we went. As I had started looking at some of the research on what millennials are doing for where they're living, one of the trends there is that they're moving into cities. And so, suburbia isn't really where they're looking to live. So that's something to think about, I think, when we're talking about apartments. And whether it's now or if it's 2 years from now, it's still going to change the character of the village if we put an apartment building up. And there's no doubt that money will be more expensive at that time. That's just a guarantee, I think. So those are the things I want to say tonight. Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
See you on Saturday.
Thank you for sharing that. We'll look forward to it. Other questions, comments at this juncture? We're not making any decision tonight. We're going to continue talking about this and accept all input, electronic, phone, carrier pigeon, any way that you can participate. We're welcome hearing from you. Come back to the council. Other comments, questions at this point? All right, well, I think we're all looking forward to, I appreciate the dialogue up here too. Obviously, this is a big issue and it deserves the attention and I don't say debate, the dialogue that we've been having on this topic. It's an important distinction. So we'll continue that dialogue and look forward to hearing more from other folks. So fortunately, we have no other items that are at all controversial to talk about tonight, other than the next item, which is 8D, our comprehensive plans. And we're going to find all kinds of development-ready sites, right?
Yes, Mayor, we will move from a specific discussion of a particular site in the downtown to a general discussion of the future of our entire village. And I will turn this back over to our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich, for the continuing discussion.
Welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor and council members again.
You're doing the whole spectrum here, historic preservation, and now
I've got some lots to sell you guys too, so.
Cradle to grave coverage here.
As best I can. And maybe in 50 years, someone will landmark one of these properties as well. So, I'm going to try to get focused again. So, we've talked about various sections of the comp plan already in two previous meetings. I think we've made it up to page 93 through the first eight sections. I'll try to slow down here a little bit. We've talked about, tonight we're going to talk about the focus area plans, implementation, and goals and objectives, which are the sections 9 through the end of the document. I'm going to start in section 9. What you'll see is a lot of updated graphics. This was a lot where we've seen a lot of the graphics that were produced in the past have been updated. These three focus areas, the Belmont-Ellsworth area, pages 100, 103, again, not much changed in here. As you can see on the map, we modified some of the focus area plans and the catalyst sites based on what had been developed over the past few years. And the numbering system changed a little bit too, so we're not numbering them 1 through 50. They're A, B, and C, so it's A1, A2. And then as we move through the document, there's different notations. Butterfield Road on pages 112 to 115 also did not change significantly. Again, the ARC van site was taken out of as a catalyst site just based on the ARC van development. And again, Fairview Avenue on pages 120 to 125 did not change significantly either. Where we've seen a significant amount of changes is in our downtown focus area on pages 104 to 111. As you recall, we had council discussions at meetings in July and October. Comp Plan Committee spent a lot of time on the downtown plan, as did the Plan Commission. You'll notice there are two introductory sections here. The Comp Plan Committee came up with one paragraph for the downtown introduction here. That's going to be on page 104. And then the Plan Commission at their meeting, to review the whole document, came up with another introductory paragraph. That's on page 104. We did provide everybody, Commissioner White looks like he has a little supplement that talked about some of the Plan Commission changes. So that's identified because a lot of those changes came in the downtown area, a couple other sections too, but mostly highlighting the downtown. In the downtown, you'll see as well that the catalyst sites have changed slightly. So TCF Bank site, which is now the Burlington Station's off, and we've moved around some of the catalyst sites as well, and various discussions as things have been developed. We also spent a lot of time before the council talking about downtown functional sub-areas. So this was used to move back to the Comp Plan Committee to talk about downtown development regulations. So this is the current functional sub-areas as shown in the document on page 110. We also, on page 111, the Comp Plan Committee recommended one set of paragraphs and descriptions on the downtown core, downtown edge of transition. And then the Plan Commission came back and requested changes to some of those paragraphs. So again, that's in the supplement here on page 111 that everyone should have. I've just highlighted up there just to show you which page we're working on. And so those were some of the key changes to the downtown that occurred from the current plan to the proposed draft update, along with some changes that Plan Commission recommended internally as well. With Ogden Avenue on pages 116 to 119, in the current comprehensive plan, that's divided up into 3 focus areas and then 2 little middle areas that we don't talk about much. What House of Levine did and what we decided to do is to make this really just one corridor. It really is one corridor. There are nodes of commercial. This node is on the west side by Finley there as well. Not a lot of the focus or the key concepts changed. We identified new catalyst sites. We took out the Packy website. Staff is recommending that we add the existing Packy website back as a catalyst site. We think that this could be a key site to re-add into the plan here when Packy Web moves from the current location to their new location there. So we think adding this Packy website back as a catalyst site would be important to do. So that's one thing we didn't do before. But as you can see on this site as well, D1 and D2 on the far left there where the Park District purchased some land, that catalyst site was split into 2. So there's some other catalyst sites changes on the plan as well. 63rd Street is a new focus area plan that we talked about. This is pages 126 through 127 and page 130. They found one catalyst site, which is the Meadowbrook Shopping Center on this. As we've talked about before, 63rd is really a mix of some single-family residential, some institutional, some multifamily, some commercial. So there's really 3 nodes of commercial there on the Fairview side of Main Street and then along the west here as well. Then when we move down to 75th Street, that's also a new focus area that we've talked about. And then this is on pages 128, 129, and 131. They identified the Grove as the principal catalytic site here, as Mr. Cassidy mentioned earlier about some of the closures and what could potentially go in there and possibly consolidating some spaces into some larger units. As well, we will take Mr. Earl's recommendation to make sure that the Fairview and 75th also shows a entry gateway as well on there. The next couple of sections we have, section 10 is the implementation section on pages 132 to 143. The only really significant change that happened here was a lot of the program descriptions got added back to talk about the programs and possible funding or grant sources. Before they were just a list. In the new comp plan, they talk about more what the programs are and provide a little bit of a description to them. And then finally, the last 23 pages of the document are the goals and objectives. That's primarily out of TCD3 discussions. There's some minor edits to these. The Plan Commission recommended some additional discussion on the downtown pattern book that was completed in 08, so that'll be added in. And then there were some stylistic changes that also occurred in those areas. So that concludes my presentation on these last 3 sections of the comp plan. If there's any questions or discussion, I'd be happy to answer any questions for you or take some notes on where you guys go with the discussion.
Thank you, Stan. I'm sure there won't be any questions or any discussion of any of these items. Who wants to start?
I'll start with a hopefully relatively brief point. That is, it's probably my fault. I wasn't sure we're going all the way to the end. I have comments about pages 164 and 165 I haven't shared yet. So, and that's actually ties into much bigger issues, so.
And we'll have opportunities again to speak about this.
I do want to add that I anticipate that we'll continue talking about this also next week as well.
It's no problem. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, let me start by asking, do we want to break this up by sub-area, or how would you like to approach it? So I don't want to necessarily jump around and then the discussion jumps around.
I think sticking to sub-area by sub-area will keep us.
Makes sense to me. Start from the beginning.
I'll hold the remainder of my questions.
Although there was a suggestion in an email that there would be more interest in the downtown area next week. That there were some property owners in the downtown that were really planning on coming next week, so.
I think a couple of them are here tonight, you're going to be hearing from them. And probably next week, too. But, well, let's start with Belmont, then. Belmont, Ellsworth Industrial Park. That key focus area. Questions, comments? I have one. On page 100, it's the section under key concepts. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong one here. It's page 100. Let me get to page 100, that might help. The bullet points under industrial park. They're not numbered, otherwise, it's the right column under the heading industrial park, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets. The one that begins future development. Redevelopment may be influenced by the presence of brownfield sites, which may require compliance with Environmental Protection Agency regulations. I think this is an opportunity to be more aspirational. This continues to be something that we want to try to get resolved. And actually, it reminds me to ask a question that I forgot to ask, which is what the status is of the EPA report that we've been waiting for since the dawn of time. And to the extent that that's not wrapped up yet, if that's the answer, then I would
be wrapped up.
I'm sorry?
If it's not wrapped up now, it won't be wrapped up.
Well,
it is not wrapped up. The federal EPA has established remediation thresholds. The state has established higher remediation thresholds. The state, the feds, and the affected 14 or 17 property owners are negotiating and discussing those remediation thresholds.
Thank you for that update. To the extent that that's an ongoing process, perhaps we can be more aspirational and say something along the lines of, rather than they may be influenced by the presence, that's fine, but that our aspirational goal is to facilitate the resolution of those so as to result in a development-ready site or something like that. Rather than simply noting that it's a problem, let's put it out there as something that we aspire to actually overcome and make it an asset. Anything else on Belmont? Ellsworth? Going once, going twice?
I got a generic question, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
I got kind of a generic question.
We'll take generic questions.
Well, it's not necessarily related to this, but it
Can you hold that thought for 1 second?
yeah, sure.
Anything from the audience? Because I think in fairness to the audience, rather than go all the way to the end and coming all the way back, let's stop at every break and ask the audience for any input, comments with respect to the Belmont, Ellsworth Industrial Park, key focus area, and catalyst sites. All right, generic.
We're about to look at a bunch of maps as part of this. Are there any remaining areas within the village that present themselves as things that could be incorporated, like by right? There's some geographical and size limitations to where that can be done. Are we exhausted from an incorporation standpoint?
The question is there any areas within our extraterritorial jurisdiction for planning that can be annexed involuntarily right now?
Correct, thank you.
The answer is no.
Okay.
We've maximized our involuntary annexation.
All right. Thanks. A lot of these butt up to some of those. That's why I'm asking. Thanks.
And in that vein, is there anything looking promising voluntarily?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, we can't make land.
If you're moving on, I suggest we pass over downtown, because we can probably knock off a bunch of them and then come back. Because we probably won't finish downtown, so if we finish all the others, or a number of the others.
I agree with you in part. Why don't we do this? Why don't we get input from whoever's in the audience?
Fair point.
Since it's 9:15.
I agree with that.
On the downtowns while they're here, because I know there's some people here who want to speak to it. And then we can come back and discuss it later. We're not making any decisions tonight anyway. I don't want to make someone wait till 10:15 just to talk about the downtown. Is anyone here in the audience who would like to speak to any of the issues with respect to the downtown focus area? Yes, please. Let's take the public comment on that now, so you don't have to wait for another hour.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners tonight. Thank you for the little bump up here. I appreciate that. I am here on behalf, I'm Linda Kunze, Executive Director of Downers Grove Downtown Management Corporation, and I'm here on behalf of several of our property owners. Jim Evans, who is with me tonight, there he is, thank you, with 7 Solutions, Graham Mosey and Michael Henkel. Graham is the owner of World Group Travel and the property owner, and Michael Henkel is with QSR Software. The properties that we're referring to are 4925 Forest, 4921, 4917, and 4913. And 25 years ago, Graham Mosey purchased his building with the knowledge that it would be able to redevelop this property. And he encouraged his neighbors to purchase on Forest because the zoning went all the way to Franklin on Forest at that point. They would like me to encourage the council to continue the downtown edge, DE1, to Franklin Avenue. They feel...
On the east side of the street.
On the east side of the street, yes. And Jim, I'll introduce you, Jim Evans with 7 Solutions, and
thanks,
thank
Linda.
you.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm here for my pin, too, because this is my first council meeting, and I'm a longtime resident of Downers Grove. I live at 5536 Middaw, and I've raised 5 kids with my wife here. We love the village. We love everything about Downers Grove. And so a few years ago when I decided to start a business, I thought what a wonderful place to put the headquarters. And so we're happy, very happy to be here. So I'm here with Linda to talk just a little bit about Forest Avenue, and I purchased through a land contract 4925 Forest Avenue from Graham Mosey. And so he and I both have an interest in that particular property. We also know the gentleman that owns the lots north of us, and collectively we think there's a great opportunity for the village there. We'd like you to leave your options open, and we're very interested in reinvesting and developing more in the village, and would like you to retain the particular zoning that you have in place right now and not make a change to those particular parcels of property. So thank you for having us tonight, and thanks for making Downers Grove a great place.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Just very quickly, I know the comment's been made before about whether the downtown edge designation should continue on the east side of Forest all the way up to Franklin. And we're not making any decisions tonight, but I'm personally, I don't know what other colleagues think about that, and they don't need to say anything because we're still talking about it, but I'm very open to that. And particularly given some of the other conversations we're having about options and maybe opening doors here and closing doors there. I think we do need to retain our flexibility and have development-ready sites, and so I'd be very open to that. Don't want to foreclose anyone else from saying anything.
I'd agree with you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Well, all right, there's a whole bunch of us, we're open to it.
I guess
But
me four.
but we're not deciding anything tonight, but what you're hearing is that there's a fair amount of support for that idea. Okay, anything else in the downtown from the audience? We're not going to discuss it. We're going to move on, but if anyone's here to talk about the downtown area,
Who
focus
wants to
area.
leave?
Right, who doesn't want to? I don't have to go, I'm not.
See ya.
If you're willing to stay, we can talk about it later.
Because at the very end of tonight's movie, after the credits, we're going to have a sneak preview of the American Foursquare lecture, like in a Marvel film. There's going to be a post-credit scene. Is it that late? No one's even smiling? No laugh?
I heard the outtakes are awesome.
Wow. All right. Trying to inject a little humor here. Butterfield.
Now, I sent around some comments. I don't know if everybody got them. I think they're reasonably brief. We turn to page 112. Under the key concepts, the third paragraph down, I think I prefer to delete that paragraph and adopt something instead. Adopt plans and strategies for the comprehensive redevelopment of the Butterfield sub-area, including business improvement districts where appropriate. So keep the basic concept, but just don't focus so specifically on TIF districts. The first bullet point in the second column, it's my understanding that lifestyle centers were a common thing.
Oh, hold on a second. I just want to say something for the record. I think that's a good suggestion. Basically, on that third bullet point, just it's saying the same concept, but more broadly, embracing various tools, including a TIF district.
There it is.
Not limited to a TIF district.
Just that, thank you for clarifying that, because I was concerned that we were sort of excluding
Oh, no.
TIF districts.
No, that's why I wanted to clarify. No, he's saying not limited to TIF districts.
All tools.
All tools beside,
Yeah.
Any and all appropriate means.
All right. Verbally, I guess not on the screen, which is good. The first bullet point in the right column, I've been told that when this was written in 2011, this is the same language from the prior comp plan. It wasn't rewritten. Apparently, the concept of lifestyle centers has fallen out of favor, so we just knock those words off. Let's see. And again, the one below it, I'm not as convinced that it needs to go, but I do question the idea that we're targeting big box retail. I'm not convinced right now, given some of the things that Mr. Casa said earlier, that that is necessarily the right thing to do. I'm not against it. I mean, if some big box retailer makes an offer and it's a good deal, of course. But so that I want to think about that one a little bit more.
Well, to your point on that, once again, I think you're rightfully focusing on not putting in the how in here, but the what. What is it that we want? How is the big box retailer, but that's not really what we're getting at.
We don't necessarily want to limit ourselves to that.
It should be whatever it is that what it is that we like about a big box retailer. That's what we want to attract there, but it doesn't have to be a big box retailer.
Exactly. I would like a bullet point. This is the second one, and half of it, or actually maybe half of it conceptually. The third line may be more controversial. When we talked earlier, when Mr. Casa was here, about our ability to compete with other areas with respect to retail sales, things like that, we have a rather remarkable fortuitous location at the intersection of two interstate highways. Given the real estate adage, location, the idea that we can't outcompete really just boggles my mind. That we start out with advantages other towns would just love to have. So the idea of putting this bullet point in here is that we do consciously and knowingly leverage our access to the highways. Now this leads to a point where I'm bringing it out there for discussion. This has to do with the sign ordinance with respect to tollway frontage. Because again, many of you have heard this, my very last meeting on the ZBA before I came to council was Fry's making a presentation about the economic value of the store as a billboard. And I strongly support the sign ordinance with respect to intrusions into our residential areas. I strongly support the sign ordinance with respect to safety driving along Ogden Avenue. But I think we are potentially at a competitive disadvantage if we don't allow our businesses with tollway frontage to properly leverage that tollway frontage. But again, I'm not saying that we've made the decision to do that, and that's why I have the language consideration of sign ordinance amendments. So that's why that's there. I'm not necessarily saying we have to do that, because there are constraints going the other way that's to be discussed. My third proposed additional bullet point is really sort of a catch-all, but it's also, though, to call out the fact a unique attribute Downers Grove has that other towns don't is our daytime population. Our daytime population is double the number of people that live here. And our economic development strategies should very explicitly target those people. So by putting that in the comprehensive plan, we're saying we have an asset that we believe should be targeted. And then perhaps the more interesting one, back when we did this in 2011, there were all talk that IDOT wanted to, or the state of Illinois or DuPage County, wanted to add an exit and a entrance ramp off of Highland Avenue. Apparently that, and at the time I thought that was an interesting idea. Apparently that's gone away. But more recently, it's occurred to me, and I've shared it with a number of people, and whether it's a good idea or not has to be investigated, but to consider adding additional access, either to I-88, basically would basically go 90 degrees to the current Towner's Drive and run all the way to Findlay. Or there's a possibility, in my opinion, and maybe the traffic engineer will say that I'm wrong, to allow direct access from the 355 Butterfield northbound exit into a potential redevelopment site at the corner, and basically in between 355 and Findlay, south of Butterfield. So those notes are in here.
Let me pause you there and take that one and go back to the sign one. I agree with that point. Again, I don't think we need to be that specific about it. I think we can put in language that basically says that we should identify and pursue opportunities to improve access to this major commercial corridor so as to facilitate, fill in the language from there.
Well, the language is investigate strategies that can increase access to and from the sub-area from nearby interstate highways.
Identify and pursue.
No, okay, investigate, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to study things, I want to do things.
I accept the change, no problem.
And then I agree with what he said about the signs too. I've always thought we could be a little bit more, I always thought that the tollway signage was a unique distinguishing element. I do think
it'll survive.
Could not only increase sales for existing, but it also could be an attractor to bring commercial businesses to our corridor. And again, you're right, we have an asset, we should be using it.
And I think
a lot of the towns would love to have a interstate, two interstates running through it.
And I think different rules for interstate highways probably survive even the Gilbert case, so we're probably okay doing that.
Yes, I think so. I think we can, when the time comes as part of the bigger discussion of that, I think that's something we certainly can reflect in here, at least in my opinion.
I do just want to make one sort of a general observation. Back when I chaired the comp plan committee in 2011, for me, actually, and it started long before then, probably the most poignant takeaway for me was the economic potential of the Butterfield sub-area. Properly leveraged, properly developed, the economic potential, in my opinion, is staggering. We just need the vision and the commitment to do it.
So there. Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you, I must say, thank you for providing such detailed advance notes on these topics. I found it to be very helpful. Other detailed, thoughtful notes on Butterfield.
Oh, and I removed the word Anchor Tenant Road.
Anchor Tenant Road. But Branding Lane is...
There is a branding iron.
I know, that's why it's called Branding Lane. It's a Downers Grove trivia question. Any questions from the audience on the Butterfield Catalyst site's key focus area? All right. Ogden?
I have a couple of comments, Mayor.
Commissioner Barnett, please.
117, key concepts, third bullet point. we talk about creating additional buffering. I'm wondering if we should also talk about the use, if we were to try and find some way to reconfigure streets in that area, that space should also be considered, those strategies considered as we try and develop larger parcels. In other words, use that vacated space for development as opposed to just suggesting it be buffering. I don't want to say any sites because people get out of their mind a little bit, but if you have a street and you decide to stop it, we have existing depth right now on Ogden Avenue. So the cul-de-sac needn't necessarily go all the way up to Ogden. And that space in between really doesn't serve well for buffering because it's already kind of between two commercial spaces on Ogden. The buffering is sort of behind those buildings. If we're talking about cul-de-sacs and street vacations as a potential to help development, I think that space that's created should be suggested for the development aspect as opposed to for buffering. Does that make any sense?
So you're saying cul-de-sac further in and leave the street right-of-way for development?
Correct.
Right. Vacate the street.
Vacate the street.
The idea of trying to do something different with the street ends there. That space, the value, I think, of that space as a buffering agent is pretty small because it's already sort of in the commercial area space.
To be specific, I believe such a cul-de-sac is just, I believe it's at Downers Drive.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
That's a good
there.
example, right.
And driving down Ogden Avenue, it always kind of like, well, there's buildings on both sides.
Yeah.
Can't they share the space somehow?
Right.
I mean, it's just.
That's a perfect example, Bill, right, exactly. So instead of using the wording in there to talk about buffering, if we're going to do something like that, or we're going to be open to those opportunities, I'd like to suggest that space be used to enhance the developable area.
Right, so it's two things then, if I'm following you. One is that as we look at increasing lot depth to support commercial development on Ogden Avenue, and we look at consolidating parcels to create, I love this phrase now, it's my new phrase, development-ready sites, we should not just be considering the parcels that are there, but also potentially, if it makes sense for other reason, the rights of way. And that might also create opportunities for not only parcel consolidation, to create larger parcels that be more attractive to a commercial tenant or a commercial business, but also it creates opportunities for creating a nice buffer between the commercial and the residential parts of that area.
Yes.
Got it.
The focus on this particular paragraph was this, because it starts out talking about cul-de-sacs. But yeah, the idea that there'd be a broader focus on rights of way as part of a strategy to enhance, create more developable or develop-ready sites is the
Right, and actually this raises a good point, because on the one hand, I think we're saying more than once now that we'd like to be more about the what we want to achieve rather than the how, but I don't know that we want to completely give up on some examples here and there, because for people who are not sitting here right now having this wonderful conversation, or people down 5 years from now might look at it and say, what the heck were they talking about? So I think maybe some examples might be good, but I agree not saying this is what you ought to do, but here's what we want to achieve, here's one of many ways to do it, just so people will have a better idea of what we're talking about.
we put burden on in terms of stormwater and green space. And so, I mean, literally up and down Ogden Avenue, almost every square footage has real value to developability later down the road. And so those spaces that are in the right-of-way that are on Ogden Avenue should be included.
Perhaps add a sentence at the end of the bullet point, in appropriate circumstances, consider the vacation of right-of-way.
To enhance space for development is what
Exactly,
what I'm
yeah.
trying to get around is this idea that we're just focusing on buffering. And maybe we should take buffering out, maybe that's the solution too. But right now, it kind of talks about those spaces being, if we get into them for this purpose, they'd be used for buffering.
Well, I think instead of just taking it out for buffering, it's saying and.
Sure.
Using it for both. We're going for a win-win.
Well, actually, it already says that potential incentive for better commercial development, comma, which can include street vacation in appropriate circumstances.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
And then we'll just ask Nan how many streets you want to vacate along Ogden.
On that same page, the third column, first paragraph, or first bullet point there, we say the right thing. I'm wondering if we could say it stronger. Beautification of Ogden Avenue should be a priority and can be achieved through the installment of streetscape. Should be a priority, and maybe would it be some value in inserting in there, for village infrastructure efforts, future village infrastructure efforts, as village considers long-term CIP planning. CIP is not the right term anymore, but long-term investment planning.
Can we just pull in, I think all that's in the Ogden Avenue master plan. Can we either reference it or pull it in or something like that? Yes. What you're talking about is in much more detail in that.
Sure. Right, I'm just trying to put something in here that's got more teeth to it.
What?
Put all my downtown stuff in the pattern.
Well, there you go.
That was all I had on Ogden, Mayor. Thank you.
Because I know the Ogden Avenue master plan continues to be one of the things that we refer to in our decisions, but cross-referencing and hyperlinking is always a cool thing to do.
The point of that, Mayor, is that the reason I'm trying to get that in there more is that we've, to this point, largely suggested that most of that work was done in conjunction with redevelopment as a function of TIF availability. The differential that I'm trying to establish, maybe not exactly the right words, though, is that as we do whatever we might do in the normal course of maintaining and upgrading, improving existing infrastructure, we should be focusing on beautification.
I agree with you, and I wasn't suggesting that we limit it to the Ogden Avenue master plan, just I think that a lot of the language that you're talking about is already there, we can just...
Lift it.
Yes. Yeah. I'm getting nods, so that's good. See, we look at the head nods over there. Usually Baker's looking at me with a frown on his face doing this. Like, all right, that's a bad idea. Don't do that.
That's all I've got.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Anything else on Ogden? You gonna do something about that junkyard? Oh, we did. Great. Questions, comments from audience members with respect to the Ogden Avenue Catalyst Sites key focus area? Okay. Fairview Avenue. I'm just glad we have so many Catalyst sites. Commissioner Jose.
Unfortunately, my technology skills aren't as, it seems, robust as Commissioner White. I don't have any illustrations to go along with what I've written. But
the commodity I lack on that is called time.
A little bit of that too. I love that the Fairview train station area is included in here. As I've previewed to my colleagues, but my main concern really is the art related to the potential realignment of Maple Avenue. I've received a fair bit of feedback over the years, with folks saying, hey, why did I hear you guys are shutting down Maple Avenue here by Fairview? What's going on with this and what's going on with that? And it's sort of little bits and pieces that are out there in the community about it. And I'm concerned that if we go so far as to say, we want this and here's how it should look, without really getting a good amount of feedback from the community, that we'd be running the risk of a heck of a lot of negative feedback about a potential development. And I think it's a larger conversation we should have with folks in the neighborhood and the community at large before we go so far as to say, let's make it look like this. And I'm looking specifically at pages 124 and 125. We want to have a conversation about it, and it's included in the key concept bullet points on page 120. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. We should have conversations about things like this. But once they say the picture is worth 1,000 words, and I'm concerned about the impact of the picture on a potential development or developer coming forward and saying, I want to do this vacate Maple Avenue.
So your suggestion would be at the bottom of 125, simply remove the bottom third of the page?
Yeah, the bottom third of the page, and
then the
perhaps
bullet point.
retooling the concept on 124. I
Well,
don't necessarily have a problem with a larger concept.
No,
It's very interesting.
but that's true too.
Let me take the chance to say I agree with Commissioner Jose on this. I don't like this proposed realignment at all. And I believe when we put it in, it was a compromise over what we were going to put in the first time. But I've never liked I didn't like the original idea, and I didn't like the compromise, but it was better than.
And my larger concerns are really the traffic impact on the neighborhood, the traffic impact on the businesses that are nearby. Yeah, I think by undertaking something this large without getting community feedback, we run the risk of forcing traffic through neighborhoods that it doesn't currently go through, whether it's past St. Mary's, north or south on Douglas, et cetera, et cetera. And I know I'm probably going to get about 500 to 1,000 words from Commissioner Barnett about traffic on Maple, and that's absolutely a problem, and we need to find ways to address it. I don't disagree with him about that. But I'm not sure this is the best way to do it.
Commissioner, where's the language that you think embraces the concept that should at least be something that is still on the table for discussion in conjunction with the neighborhood? So if you took out the diagram, which is sort of the artist's rendering of what might happen, where do you see that being captured as something that is, we're not taking that concept off the table completely, but something that, depending on what the opportunities were and what the input of the community was in the neighborhood, it would still be embraced somewhere in the plan?
Sure, it's page 120, the middle column, 3 bullets up from the bottom. It reads, explore realigning Maple Avenue to improve connectivity and circulation in the Fairview area.
Okay.
And actually, it's also on page 122 in the E2 discussion of the catalyst sites. The potential exists to realign Maple Avenue.
Okay, that's just basically talking about taking the picture out.
Correct.
I don't have a problem with that.
I think he's talking about 124 and the bottom of 125. Because the...
Yeah, the 124.
What's the bottom of 125?
Well, 124 shows the same thing.
It shows the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's largely, the two are largely the same.
Yeah, it's not as obvious on 124.
Yeah, some of these redevelopment plans, this were sort of dashed off and create the wrong impression at times.
Well, let's, again, just from my own perspective, I don't have a problem with taking out the diagram on the bottom of 125 entitled Maple Avenue Realignment. Let's revisit 124 and how to deal with that rather than try to mark it up tonight. But you're not proposing taking out the language, as I understand it?
No,
Okay.
we should have larger conversations.
Okay.
My biggest concern here, when it comes to 124, is really the extension of Douglas South. I think that creates a lot of possibilities for cut-through traffic through the neighborhood that already has a fair amount of that. And
there's other ways to do that.
A lot of potential conflicts also on Rogers, with sending more cars down. You've got, what's a street that gets quite a few speeders, and there's a lot of street parking. So, a lot of potential conflicts there.
We already have a lot of traffic on Sheldon that's going above the speed limit, just cutting through. I would hate to do anything that's going to increase that, because that runs along the park. And it's also a blind hill. And you wind up with, at rush hour, people just flying through there at, 40 miles an hour, and that conflicts with the kids on the bikes and people walking dogs, and it's, can be a little frightening at times.
I think there's some value to the, to having more than just the words, though. Bill, what, Commissioner White, you want to mention some of your thoughts on this? I guess I'd like to see maybe a modified version of that diagram. The diagram sounds like it was a compromise before. I know Bill's got another possible idea there. Sort of suggesting graphically to folks that review this document that we're interested in concepts that realign it is a lot more than one bullet point. I mean, I totally agree with Greg that there's some potential there that's really scary. But I'm wondering if maybe a modified version of that diagram on 125 shouldn't still remain.
Well, we can discuss it. I mean, I understand where he's coming from. we don't have to redraw it tonight, but want to come back to it?
Sure.
We can entertain other things that may be less, maybe less offensive. And meanwhile, Commissioner Wallace and Commissioner Waldeck are sitting here going, these are north side problems. North side problems.
As a matter of fact, I value traveling down Maple Avenue. It's a,
So you're the guy who's speeding.
yeah, well, you know, I can't read the speed signs. Actually, I like to see traffic move down Maple Avenue. I think it was listed as a minor arterial, although it's somewhere a collective. But I'd like to see it as a minor arterial, but also to value the view as you go by, value the neighborhood. You know, there's a lot of towns that you travel through, you know, and you're going through the town, but you also value and you get a sense of the architecture and setbacks and the beauty of the town, even as you're going by a little faster than on a local street, so.
And Maple is a particularly beautiful street.
Pardon?
And Maple is a particularly beautiful street.
I think there ought to be a way to preserve Maple Avenue. I'm not saying historic preservation, you know, down the line, but there ought to be a way so that.
Oh, too late, that's already been tweeted out.
50 years from now, you know, 50 years from now, it'll still be a nice drive, tree lined, but then you can also get from, you know, let's say from Avery Cooley across the tracks without a lot of.
Or say from my house to
barricades.
Village Hall.
Pardon?
Or from my house to Village Hall.
So that's my concern on Maple and the idea, the very idea of closing Maple was just repugnant to me. I like what we did, you know, and I don't know what the traffic I mean, with the train accidents there, car versus train, I know we solved the problem of the hill, you know, the speeding and trying to get airborne.
Solved?
That was a problem, and I think that was solved. But yeah, I value Maple, and I also value it as a minor arterial.
All right, so what I heard that is we're going to
Come back to it.
come back to
Yep.
it. Just there may be
Smooth it out there.
further compromise for the graphics.
I got a couple of page 120 things, Mayor.
Okay?
The first one is related to the subject we were just talking about, sort of. In the key concepts column, there's two words that I'd like us to consider removing. In the first bullet point, the word potential.
Which bullet point, Commissioner?
The first bullet point, center column under key concepts, there's the word potential in the fifth line, and it's a little bit like kind of, sort of, maybe, because we say explore incentives and financing opportunities to find necessary property and infrastructure improvements and to facilitate potential parcel.
Just say facilitate.
Just
parcel
facilitate parcel assembly.
And then put a comment at the very end that says where appropriate or something like that.
Kind of, sort of, maybe. I think the point of this being sort of more aspirational, again, is the idea that we think that probably to achieve some of the desired goals here, likely, we want to be in a position to be prepared and ready to facilitate should the opportunity come along. And then the other thing is kind of a question for whomever wants to answer it. There's two trains of thought that seem to be on this page that I'm not sure I can square up. We say in a couple places, we sort of make a point of saying, both in the first column and at the end of the second column, the existing uses are appropriate. The existing land uses in the Fairview area are appropriate. But then we say we want a priority should be on updating and enhancing the built form of the area, but then we list these catalyst sites, which are pretty much the whole area. And we talk about parcel consolidation and potential realignment of Maple. It seems like there's some conflict there that I'm not sure. I guess I don't know why we would go out of our way to suggest that the existing uses are appropriate. We just take that out.
If you read that as types of uses, not the particular land uses.
Yeah.
These types of uses are the same types we'd like to see, but after it's redeveloped with more modern buildings and a more modern development.
Yeah, but then when we talk about our potential uses, we talk about a lot of mixed-use stuff where there isn't right now. I mean, we kind of, I think we kind of contradict that.
For what it's worth, I do not recall specifics, but I think this was to balance certain considerations that may no longer be germane. That people back in 2010 had specific issues, which we all forgotten what they were. So we can probably safely delete that bullet point, in my opinion. Because it's generic, vague, even-handed, and totally non-specific, so we have no clue what it really means. Or what it originally referred to.
Which means it's perfectly drafted guidance.
Creativity.
It's a bullet point that means nothing.
On 123, site E6, as long as we've got our magic planner highlighters out, I know there's a comment about that space to the east being narrow and perhaps only useful for stormwater. I wonder if that site, if that E6 outline ought to go all the way over to, was that Williams? You've got residential facing on Second there, but if that end corner of kind of Williams and the tracks is a sort of light industrial property right now. Space is a premium. We keep saying that tonight. So I guess I'd like to see that kind of highlighter for that area go all over to Williams.
Oh, you mean, I think it's a truck yard?
Yeah, I
Truck
think it's
storage yard
a
or
construction
storage yard?
company who uses it for yard storage right now
Yeah.
primarily, right?
Fine with me.
That's my Fairview comments, thanks.
Other Fairview comments? Questions from the audience on the Fairview key focus areas, catalytic?
I would sure hate to lose Pepperidge Farm because it makes the neighborhood smell great at night.
I second that.
You know when it's cinnamon raisin night, you know when it's goldfish night. It is, the aromas are awesome. It's one of the special parts of walking the dogs in the evening.
Maybe we can get a chocolate factory over there.
Okay, now Southsiders. We're gonna lead the discussion on 63rd Street and 75th Street, right? 63rd Street.
Maybe I'm going to be a little bit too paranoid about this, but I'd kind of like to defer discussion of 63rd Street, maybe even take it, and maybe revisit that down the road when a certain lawsuit's settled, because a lot of this goes to the proper redevelopment of that site, and I just don't want to saying things that going in the record that somebody might misconstrue.
Are we close to a resolution of that?
In my opinion, no.
I would agree with you if we were party to the lawsuit, but since we're
I
not.
just didn't know how close to a resolution of that lawsuit and how long we would be talking about delaying this.
5 to 7 years,
Okay.
average cave length.
So the next time the comp plan comes up for.
Right.
Okay.
Potentially.
Just
No,
trying to.
I understand your concerns. I'd be more sympathetic to it if we were actually a part of the case. And things we say could have been used against us, but we're not. So we should not discuss it. But we're not deciding anything finally tonight anyway, so people can say what they wish or not.
Well, with that
as they
said,
please.
I don't like the redevelopment concept. I think it would be better to, if in fact we go to residential, to put the residential, make the division run east-west rather than, make the division run north-south rather than east-west. And what I also don't like about the redevelopment, which actually goes against what's in the text, we should encourage pedestrian access from any residential redevelopment into the neighboring commercial area. As it is, that road is kind of like a moat that blocks access from the potential multifamily to, now the actual text goes a different direction and talks about all those different things.
So you don't like the picture?
But the text is fine.
Which picture?
Well, let's throw that in the same bucket as Fairview.
Oh, okay.
We can come-
I'm looking at, not that far.
I guess we're going to come back to this like we are at Fairview. less interested in exactly what the picture looks like and more interested in trying to clearly, which pictures can help, demonstrate the premise that we are interested and open to redevelopment beyond commercial. I guess that's the thing that I wouldn't want to somehow lose.
Oh, we don't want to lose that, absolutely.
As a function of, I don't want to omit that picture. If we want to, the seven of us somehow want to turn it around, that's fine, but I don't want to lose it.
But the larger question, and this really doesn't concern my earlier comments, is whether 63rd Street can be commercially viable outside of neighborhood commercial. You would think with an interstate exit it could be, but Dominick's didn't survive. That's in Woodridge. And the target, my understanding is that the target is not one of the better performing targets. And as a consequence, if we try to keep, there may not just be enough to have that be corridor, there's not enough activity, not enough consumer demand. I think that's just the reality.
Which is interesting, given where it's located, right off of the interstate.
Well, exactly, but it's kind of no man's land, though. It's just.
But the question is why?
Is there sort of a critical mass question there? You've got this interstate access, but you've got, because you only have the south side.
I think there's that. I think now I'm reminded of something that Mr. Casa taught us about Ogden Avenue, is you get into this place where retailers in particular want to, they look at their density that surrounds a certain area, and they want to be around where there's other retail so that people will go to it as a magnet. And we've had the same conversation with Ogden Avenue west of 355. There really isn't much in Lyles. So the retailers don't like that end of Ogden Avenue as much as they do the other end, where you've got this long stretch of all kinds of stuff to stop in at. That may be the problem, because if you go, the same problem, you go west of 355 on 63rd Street, and there's
Shell.
Nothing, really, but residential, until you get to Route 53.
So one of the things that earlier in the book, when we were looking at that land use map, I was kind of trying to touch on this a little bit. I wonder if we should rethink some of the future land use map stuff we put there. We've had some consternation about it, but two, do we really want to say that the north side of 63rd at any point, in at least, between, say, Main and 355, is something that we want to say our future land use plans expect for commercial use on the north side, where it currently sits as residential today? I don't know if we do or not. I'm a little skeptical of it myself, because
I'd rather go the other way and keep 63rd as a boundary, that there's no expectation that we go.
Yeah, I think we should sort that out, because right now it's a little ambiguous, and if there is this lack of critical mass from a commercial standpoint, then we're maybe just kind of stomping on our own toes by planning that way.
Actually, I do like what's in the text, that the north side of 63rd Street in appropriate circumstances might be suitable for more of a row house concept of 30-foot lots and connected housing with an alley to allow access from behind, so you get rid of the curb cuts. Actually, I have a drawing of that I didn't share. I'll share that before the next meeting.
Did you do that in your spare time?
In paint.
Are you looking for a planning job?
Just consulting.
Just consulting. Free consulting. Yeah, we like it better free. Okay, other thoughts, concepts?
There's a
63rd Street?
There's I would like to change, I guess I'd like to change the north side of 63rd Street as it relates to, say, Woodward and Belmont area. That I'm talking about the future land use map. I'm kind of conflating pages here. But we've got that labeled right now as sort of potential light office usage. And while I don't know that there's a big detriment to that, there's sort of a part of the point of this is to tell people what to expect, both residents and developers and potential residents, and us as we make decisions about capital improvements and things. And I'm increasingly less convinced that trying to lightly commercialize the north side of 63rd makes a lot of sense. And I look at some other areas along 63rd, along 55th Street and other communities where it's very apparent that it intends to be residential. We're still talking 45-mile-an-hour 4-lane roads, but where it's very definitively intending to be residential, and they seem to be redeveloped as residential in real positive ways regularly. And I guess when we've got this sort of uncertainty out there, you get a kind of combination of incorporated, unincorporated. There's some things in play that make that awkward. But if we were a little clearer about expectations, I think differently than we are right now, it might serve us better long-term in terms of what people do with their properties along 63rd Street.
Well, turning to page 26, and listen to Commissioner Barnett's comments, the area between Stonewall Avenue, well, maybe not Stonewall, at a minimum Woodward, some of that sort of light blue, it's not really kind of bluish purple, should, my off-the-cuff, subject for discussion, would be to change that to single-family attached.
About east of Woodward.
Potentially. I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I just don't want to do that off the cuff. But
That's the area I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think that ought all.
well, no, but it shouldn't, whether it's single-family attached or detached would be my question.
Okay. But what about light office?
No.
Yeah. I think we're probably on the same page there.
I mean, I'm not sure, whether I'd want it to be orange or yellow is the question, not whether, it shouldn't be blue.
Yeah, okay.
And then when you go east of Stonewall, that's Indian Trail School.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that's that color. But all this sort of purplish blue, if I'm not colorblind, that should be either yellow or orange. Just to send, the purpose is exactly as you said, to send a clear signal to the development community, don't come here with commercial proposals.
And to the residential development community, that this is space that's not going to end up accidentally surrounded by another commercial entity.
Others have thoughts on that?
A question, not on that, but on the 63rd Street.
Hold on. Anybody else want to weigh in on comments about the future land use plan designations for those areas in 63rd? Let me just ask a practical question as we go forward on this. Just taking that last conversation as a conversation, where do we go as a practical matter? Next steps on that?
Council will need to provide us direction on those things. So
Okay.
we'll just bring it back next week, I would think.
And be more specific, so basically everyone should think about it, and we should be a little bit more specific about it, maybe have some magic marker exercise so that people can see it, and then we'll continue the conversation and can provide more specifics.
Yeah, we are tracking all these changes. We'll,
Well, the reason why I asked is I'm not so sure that was a change, as it was a discussion.
yeah, well, we're tracking all the discussions and we'll bring them forward to say which ones do you want to make and which ones do you not want to make.
Right, because in fairness, I think folks could have seen 3 or 4 different things based on that conversation, and they're probably not going to react to it until they have the new color in front of them. So the next step would be to have some version of that to look at as part of facilitating our next conversation.
Will do.
So that everybody else can see what it looks like and then provide direction. Does that make sense? Everyone still awake?
Maybe just a little handout on just the part we're going to talk about, instead of going to a page in the book.
That, generally, yes.
Good idea.
Yes.
Genius, we'll do that.
Occasionally it's there.
All right, question. Commissioner Barnett.
127, there's a icon, it appears on 129 also for 75th Street, so it takes us to the next section. Realistically, what do we think we can do relative to this improved pedestrian crossing thing? We identify a bunch of places. We're really not talking about stuff we have a whole lot of control over, though, are we? I mean, we're talking about 63rd Street, and we talk about, at one point I saw some comment about paving differentials. We can't really do any of that, right?
Could you give us, maybe just re-ask that question for me, please?
Sure.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I can ask it real fast.
Go ahead, Martin.
If you look at the little blue daisy wheel or whatever it is, where it talks about improved pedestrian crossing as something to accomplish, I think if I'm stating your question properly, was what can we really do about that?
63rd is easier than 75th Street, but it's still a challenge. They're both challenges.
Yeah, right.
So realistically, what options exist for actually reaching some improvements?
Highway.
Got it.
Yeah, right.
So we could be aspirational, but what would that be?
Right. So
That's the question.
we'll provide some examples of
Okay.
the pedestrian improvements you can make on those types of street widths and intersections.
Perfect.
We want to have those really long overhead chain link fence walkways that some communities have over this. Not.
Surrounded completely by chain links, so they can't go.
Right.
Or throw
Exactly.
things out.
But you put cups in it and invite people to prom.
Right by the high school.
You know that would happen. All right. Questions from the audience on 63rd Street? Catalyst sites, key focus area. All right, now we're going all the way to south end of town, 75th Street.
Okay, remove references to lifestyle centers, and then change the TIF paragraph as with Butterfield to being a more comprehensive redevelopment approach. And as sort of an immediate comment, vacancies in Ultra and Michaels also allows us to take a look at immediate potential redevelopment.
Right. I think, again, we should have something that's more focused on what we want to accomplish there than the how.
Right, so that, I have a very brief paragraph I submitted, but something similar to what we wrote for Butterfield, to something where it's more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Where it's not TIF-centric.
Right, that's fine.
TIF inclusive, but not TIF-centric.
Yes. Other thoughts, comments on 75th Street? Key focus areas? No?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a practical question. Special uses. Correct me if I've got this wrong, but special uses largely are not really deniable, right? Is that right?
Sorry?
Special uses are not really, truly, in most instances, deniable, because you've got them listed as uses, even though they be special. And in most instances, and certainly in the ones I've experienced up here, they tend to be duplicative of existing uses that are in play. And the combination of those two things make them largely not really, truly deniable, right?
In the post-Clarin, post-Living Word case laws from the late 90s and early 2000s, the burden of proof or reasons to deny it has shifted to the village, where it used to be the burden of proof that the standards were met was on the petitioner. So the village would have to show that once you list a special use, there's a particular reason or concern that's germane to that site as to why the special use cannot be approved.
The reason I'm asking is because when I consider 75th Street and that paragraph about the catalyst site on 75th Street, and it applies to Butterfield, I guess you probably could apply the same thing to Woodward and 63rd. there aren't any, I don't see us trying to avail ourselves to any particularly different tools that might cause radical changes in those areas. And what sort of seems to happen to us is all these incremental things that cause us to not be able to end up with a big dramatic change. So people get a special use to put in a new facility on a site, and then that sort of cements that site's use, even though what we're sitting here wishing was that we had a way bigger change. So I don't have an answer.
Special use, say one of the standards is compliance with the comprehensive plan. So we have in effect strengthened the importance of this document when applying for a special use. So that's been our response to that issue.
Right, because you're correct that a special use you're going to have a really good reason, a demonstrable reason to deny if all the other standards are met. And usually they come in here and they've got all the standards lined up, and you can disagree with element 1 or element 2. But yes, it was a number of years ago, we built into the preamble, it's a threshold condition.
Sure.
Before you even get to the typical the four criteria, that whatever it is has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And one of the problems in the past was, well, how specific was the comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're trying to do now.
I understand that, but this comprehensive plan.
So I think where you're going is to address it in here.
That's what exactly, thank you, Mayor. That's exactly where I'm going. With the wording that we're looking at right now is 63rd and 75th and Butterfield. I would suggest that on an incremental basis basically allows most of the types of uses to remain in place through and therefore kind of long-term prevents us from big changes to those areas. I'm concerned about that.
Well, is your concern that new special uses would be allowed unless we put in here that we don't want said special uses, or this is not what we're looking for in this corridor, that they would start to multiply and then become?
They kind of have. And that's probably the best description.
Or are you talking like the ones that already exist, and how can we say?
No, it's the new ones, and that's probably the best description, that they would kind of multiply. So you've got areas that are right now are multiple parcels, potentially even multiple owners, in areas that we'd love to say we were going to redevelop in some mass scale. And yet, unless we say something pretty different in here, I think we sort of set the stage for the expectation that those continued small uses, not one-offs, are going to continue. And I don't have an answer to it, but it's a concern I have about when we look at some of these larger concepts.
I think the answer is to once again describe what the what is. What's the outcome? What is it we're trying to achieve?
Multiple contiguous parcel development?
I mean, whatever you want to call it, if it's parcel assemblage that supports a development-ready site of whatever it is we're trying to land. And then if somebody comes to us and says, well, hey, I want to do a special use on this little snow cone shop right here in the corner that's going to screw up the whole plan, we say, well, no, because that's not what we're trying to do.
I don't have the right wording, but let's take the Grove, for example.
Nothing against snow cones.
Take the Grove Shopping Center, for example. If somebody came to us and said they wanted to put a series of new outlots in between 75th Street and the larger portion of the building, I think we'd be suggesting from our current comprehensive plan that most of those uses would probably be permitted uses. And they would have the effect of putting another 20 or 30 years between something like this and what's there now.
Right.
So I don't know if there's a way to get around that. I don't know. I'm just asking the question while we're talking about these particular areas.
I can offer, this is just a minor anecdote, but I think I can avoid specifics. We had a client, a person who owned property in Woodridge. They wanted to add a pole barn on their property. And the special use was denied because the comprehensive plan called for the property going commercial. And they wouldn't let them do anything because they had a pre-imagined goal for the site, and any development inconsistent with the pre-imagined goal was prohibited. And I think I know where Commissioner Barnett's coming from, because if our comprehensive plan is too generic or vague, then any special use is going to be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Correct.
And that goes to what extent, as a community, do we want to dictate use of property? And we need to make a conscious decision that means reduce sales tax.
So,
libertarian mentality will lead to reduced sales tax.
so this is why we do.
Okay, it's after 10 o'clock, you can't start talking like that now.
So this is why we actually do the focus area plans, because these are the areas of concern where these types of details become very important. And so while most of the document is at, let's say, a 30,000 foot level with bullet points and aspiration, the important sites we think are subject to change that affects a larger area of the community, we drill down 20,000, 10,000 feet. So to address that issue, we should be as bold and specific as we would like to be in the comprehensive plan. That's step one. Step two, when we write the laws in support of the comprehensive plan, we need to be very specific in those standards and those lists of permitted, not permitted, and special uses. So it's especially important in the focus areas to say exactly what this council means. What's your vision?
So say what you
We're
mean.
not going
mean
to
what
finish
you
this
say.
next week.
We're certainly not going to finish it at 10, 11 tonight, but I'd encourage us to all to really think that through a little bit, because that is the process.
Yes.
And this is an opportunity.
Yes.
And we right now have
Yes.
the potential to gloss past it.
Yes, and I think we should.
I'll go as far as that we do need to make a conscious decision, fully aware of the pros and cons as we're
Yes.
looking at it.
Yes. Say what we mean and mean what we say.
It's more complicated than that.
It's easy to say, and it sounds good, rolling off the tongue. All right, but no, I agree with the, I agree with the sentiment. Other comments, questions on 75th Street? It's more complicated than that, and it also doesn't happen as much as it should. Questions, comments from the audience on 75th Street, Catalyst sites? Unfortunately, nobody at home will hear you, because we're being broadcast live. And it gets recorded on YouTube, and no one will hear your question. Of course, everyone wants to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, welcome back. Yeah, Mike Loretto, 518 Blackburn Court. I live on the most south end part of Downers Grove. As a concerned resident over there, is there a possibility that we could break up the Michaels and the old Ultra Foods? And like we were talking about before, big retailers are not looking at filling in that whole space and don't want that whole space. Can we split that up into maybe instead of having 2 to 4? Because even on the busiest days, and as a firefighter off duty all the time, and I get to drive around the town hall as much as I want on my off days, I noticed that we don't even fill that parking lot up even close with the Ultra Foods and the Michaels when they were open. So is there a way we could break it down more and have it so it, I guess, splits up a little bit and you can add more businesses to that area over there?
Well, the short answer is yes. The first step is to outline what we want there.
Yeah.
Because of course it's privately owned.
Yeah.
There are limits on what
Right.
we can do to
Right.
somebody else's property.
I'm
But
saying we could be
certainly-
friendlier though to the
We can certainly
businesses
say,
that
here's
want
what we'd like to see it look like.
Yeah.
So we're identifying that the development community and the owners and future owners. Then we can also facilitate the use of tools that will help make that happen.
Okay.
If
That was
that's a
just my
vague,
question.
generic enough answer to your question.
Yeah, I know it's hard to answer something like that with everything going on, but I was just curious about
No,
that.
yes, good question, thank you. God bless you. Anything else from the audience on 75th Street? All right, dare we tread back to downtown?
Got to table it.
You want next week? That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing all yes, fine with me. I was ready to go.
Someone else suggested it, that's what I wanted to do.
It's like Winston Churchill, I get most of my best work done between 10 and 2 a.m. Okay, we'll come back to the discussion of Main Street focus area next week.
Along with some of the other policy questions
Yes.
framed up with some options.
Right, I would suggest that we, if my colleagues agree, why don't we start with Main Street? So we can get that, especially since there are people who thought that was going to be discussed in any way. We can focus on that, because I'm sure there'll be follow-up items there too. And then we can stop at a natural breaking point on Main Street and come back to these other things that we identified tonight. Does that make sense? Sure. Awesome. All right, we do have one more item on the first reading agenda. Item 8E.
Which is an ordinance amending stormwater and floodplain provisions. This ordinance essentially does two things. Number one, it updates our local stormwater regulations to be compliant with the county ordinance, which is a requirement in this county. So it updates our ordinance to match the county requirements. The second thing it does is it provides clarity on a couple of items of our existing regulations. It does not make any substantive changes in these areas. This is what we describe as housekeeping measures. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions from the council? We all in favor of following county ordinance? Questions from the audience?
Do we have a choice?
No?
Okay.
Now, if you want to retain full waiver status. Good evening. Welcome back.
Thank you. John Plifka, 6016 Washington. I'll make this as quick as possible. 26.600 SEC. Language is proposed to clarify when a permit is required for various small projects, including impervious projects under 500 square feet. If a resident wanted to put a park bench next to their garden and put down 18 square feet of patio stones, he would be in violation of this ordinance?
I don't know.
All right, so I would think that some consideration should be given for like landscaping projects and things like that.
I don't know, but I can probably find out.
100 square feet is the threshold.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is patio removal and replacements. 100% removal and replacement, or if you had a brick or paver patio where you needed to do maintenance periodically because of frost damage, would you need a permit for that?
Maintenance does not require a permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good questions. You're probably not the only person who will have them. And very good. You're two for two. Any other questions from the audience? All right, very good. That brings us to, do you want me to say it or do you want to say it?
That concludes our first reading, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to the mayor's report. Real quickly, just have to say once again, thank you very much for the terrific event took place this weekend. The Chicago Suburban Preservation Alliance meeting was hosted by Landmarks Illinois, the Village of Downers Grove, the Friends of the Edwards House. Lots already been said about everyone and how wonderful that was. I won't repeat it, but once again, thank you to Stan. It really was terrific, and I thought we got a lot of attention from a lot of communities. Someone said, I think Landmarks Illinois said that there were a number of attendees from other communities that said that they wish that they had a Friends of the Edwards House organization in their towns. So that went pretty well. The American Foursquare lecture was already mentioned earlier. As everyone should know, Coffee with the Council is going to be this Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m. in the committee room.
Yes, sir.
Across the hall here, and the entire focus will be on the facilities discussion. So we want to pick up that, and as mentioned earlier, we want to hear from folks who can make it to come on down and look at it, ask questions, and provide input. Obviously, we'll take input electronically and otherwise before, during, and after Saturday. Obviously, St. Patrick's Day is Friday. I'll come back to that later. But the following day, March 18th, is a more somber day. I just want to remind this community that Saturday, March 18th, 1974, was when we lost the only police officer ever to die in the line of duty here in Downers Grove, and that was our Officer Richard Barth. So this Saturday, the 18th, will be the 43rd anniversary of his death. And one thing that we always do in this community is remember Officer Barth and his family. So thank you, Chief Bluter, for reminding me of that somber milestone. And that's all I have on my report. Go back to the village manager, item 10, manager's report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, one quick report regarding the implementation of the 2017 general fund budget. As you know, staff monitors budgetary performance throughout the year, and we report key findings to the council as needed. You heard Mr. Casa talk to us about some concerns in our sales tax revenue, particularly in the second half of 2016 with declining revenues. We're only a few months into the FY17 budget, and staff has already noticed that certain revenues are tracking significantly lower than we budgeted. In fact, we project a $1 million revenue shortfall driven primarily by the drop in sales tax, also some drop in income tax and hotel tax. It's a $1 million shortfall as projected now. Could be more, could be less. We'll continue to monitor and act appropriately. We have put together an action plan, which we will be implementing at the staff level, which would address that up to $1 million shortfall. This plan uses one-time savings that are not repeatable over multiple years, but also do not harm the long-term future of this village. We are implementing this plan during the 2017 budget, and it calls for the reduction of transfers out from the general fund into our other supported funds, about $600,000. Really, we're also taking advantage of some good fortune in the mild winter weather that has saved us approximately $150,000 of snow and ice control operations. We've also identified $150,000 of other operational savings through our continued implementation of lean efforts and efficiencies. And we're also calling for a reduction in staff travel and training that should net us a savings of about $75,000. However, we will continue to provide travel and training that is necessary to maintain professional credentialing of our staff. So these actions have 4 key results. First and foremost, it should keep expenses in the general fund less than the revenues. That's very important as we head into 2018, where we plan to issue some sort of bond for facilities. What this plan does is it avoids the use of reserves or fund balances, which minimizes the likelihood of a change in our bond rating. We get downgraded in our bond rating, the cost of borrowing money goes up. This plan also maintains the service levels and provides staffing at or near the level as called for when the council approved this FY17 budget just a few months ago. It's important that we maintain service levels, especially in areas where we continue to see increased demand for service, like building permit reviews. Most importantly, I think this plan is flexible because it is built primarily on transfers in and out of the general fund. If these issues do not come to fruition, if the general fund revenues recover and we're off on our projections, then we can simply reverse this plan and go ahead and make those transfers. So it offers quite a bit of flexibility. Just wanted to make the council and community aware of how we are responding to the revenue shortfalls that Mr. Casa mentioned, and we will provide updates as needed as we implement this plan. Happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you. And obviously, we prefer not to have the situation, but these situations do arise. And as Commissioner Barnett said earlier, we are always prepared for them and planned for contingencies. So I compliment staff on having what I think is a mindful and prudent way to address this issue. You've done your job. Now, for the reasons that we heard earlier tonight that are more long-term issues, it's up to the council and the community going forward as we get into the long-range plan to address the broader issues that have manifested themselves acutely here. But this is, I think, a prudent way for dealing with this for now. But as we mentioned earlier, long-range, there's other stuff we need to be doing. Other questions, comments from members of the council? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. That ends my report.
Very good. That brings us to item 12, council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to share with those here in the audience and those at home. Well, they don't put you on the agenda. You are on the agenda. I covered it up with Officer Barstow, so I have an excuse. Sorry, we'll go back. Item 11, attorney's report. Madam Attorney, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Only one quick item to report out tonight, and that is an ordinance amending stormwater and floodplain provisions. That is all. That will be on next week's active agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I apologize for the oversight.
No problem.
And now we're legal for next week. Now, we'll go to item 12, council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to report out to those in the audience or those who are watching at home, either goings on in the community or other items of interest, or to share something with the rest of the council from their liaison roles. I'll start with Commissioner Jose tonight. Anything to report?
Mayor, thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Barnett?
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Waldeck?
No report.
Commissioner Earl?
No report.
Commissioner Wallace?
Very quick plug for the 2017 Mustang Trot 5K Run Walk, April 9th, 9 a.m. Downers Grove South High School. You can register at mustangtrot.weebly.com. That is all there.
Thank you. And if you want to feel good about yourself, I'll be in that race. You're guaranteed to beat me. Commissioner White?
No report.
And I have nothing further to add, so I will wish everyone a safe and happy St. Patrick's Day. And with that, ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, and good night, and sláinte.